Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm Jay Sticky.
And today we are going to talk class, but not until after we have done our 2 Less Wrong posts like we always do.
We're going to talk class after we go to class.
That's right. And the first lesson in today's class is...
Original seeing.
Yes, which is an interesting post because it is entirely just a quote from somewhere else rather than being anything new or originally written. But on the other hand, like drawing people's attention to one specific interesting thing out of a book is also valuable.
And I've had people recommend this book to me from outside rationalist circles. The Zen and Art, or the Art and Zen of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
That was close.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was recommended to me by my AP English teacher way back in the day, but I never got around to it.
My uncle, who works on motorcycles and other vehicles, recommended it. So
Isn't it about Che Guevara? No?
It's
Maybe I was thinking about the Motorcycle Diaries.
yeah. That's
Okay.
the one. That's a good movie. Oh wait, is that a book?
I think it was originally a
It
book.
was probably originally a book. Anyway,
So this is a totally different motorcycle with a different dude on it.
yes.
Okay.
It's also not.
it's just more about Zen. I think this chapter is probably pretty indicative of what the book is like.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a
Yeah.
lot of and here's how to replace your whatever on the motorcycle, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to articulate. It's like,
Is there not a lot of motorcycle maintenance in it?
well, there is, but it's more about it's sort of a story about a guy and some topics.
And parables like the one in this in this post.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping to actually be able to learn something about motorcycle. Apparently when you read Moby Dick, you learn a lot about whaling. Just in general, there's suddenly
You'll learn stuff
here's
about
20
motorcycles.
pages about whaling.
You learn how insufferably boring it is and how you wish you could throw yourself off the edge of the boat just from being forced to read it.
It occurred to me just a few weeks ago how fucking bizarre it is to just go and tether yourself to a giant whale and be like, well, I bet I can float but longer than he can keep swimming. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah, the book feels about that smart.
Moby Dick, you mean?
Yeah, I hated it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hated it too. But
Yeah.
I
Were
hated
you-
Old Man in the Sea worse.
Yes.
Did you also read that in one setting? Because it's it's a novella. I could just crunch right through this in one set. And I remember finishing it and just slowly putting the book down and then laying down on the couch.
It would have
and
been like
being
15 years ago.
"Oh,
I
I feel
can't
like I gotta
remember if I read the whole thing or if I finished it or not. And I might be conflating the Old Man in the Sea with the other one that we were just the whale one.
It's really similar. The entire story, I'll summarize it, is there's
Angry fisherman.
an old man goes out in a little boat and then he hooks a big fish and it's all about how his life's shit and if he could just get one good big fish then he could turn his life around, but he does battle with this fish and is being dragged around by it, and it's just an entire novel-length story about how miserable this guy's life is, and then in the end he fucking loses the fish and then he loses everything, and it's just a book that wants to just punch you in the face repeatedly.
I guess I've read multiple stories like that. I didn't realize they were all Old Man in the Sea remixes.
Well, I don't know if that was the first one, but
See, I'm bad at picking
Most famous,
up.
at least.
I'm bad at picking up lessons and subtleties and morals from stories. But the moral of that is obvious: his life wouldn't have been any better if he caught this fish. Right? He thinks this is what he
life
wants,
is
but it's
just
not really what he
terrible.
wants.
It
Well,
is
his
apparently
life
is what
is
I took
terrible.
away from that story.
Yeah.
Where, there was no.
Don't be an old fisherman is the moral of the story.
He's-
It
or-
was
or
more
if you do-
don't live. It's just life is shit.
Just do it happy, right? If you being old and fishing sounds tight. If you're into fishing,
So I guess the moral of the story is depression is a hell of a drug.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the thing with original seeing
Yes.
is that and this is my the 30-second version. We'll do the longer version. Student. It's a parable of a student who's like, I need to write a 500 word essay on the United States. It's like, okay, great. You're gonna get through, I don't know, nothing in 500 words.
Yeah.
So the teacher's like, how about just
Just this town that
yeah,
we're in.
just this town. And they're like, I can't think of anything. And then, okay, how about just Main Street? I couldn't think of anything again. Okay, how about the front of the Opera House on Main Street? And then that one is like, oh yeah, and then, okay, how about a brick?
Yeah, it starts
on the
with
top
the upper
left.
left-hand brick.
Yeah. And then they're like, they come into the 5,000 word essay and they're like, I did it. I saw it because I saw it with fresh eyes because we were trying to regurgitate thoughts.
Started
It's
with one brick,
uninspiring.
and then I wrote about the next one, and then the third, and before long I was writing about the entire facade, and then the windows, and then
Yeah.
So that sounds fun, and I like the parable for what it's going for, but that the exact example sounds like complete dog shit. Because what's the assignment if you're getting graded? It can't be write the history of something. Maybe it was.
Yeah,
might
I
have just
don't
been
know. I
write
didn't read the
write a
book.
historical
I know,
essay.
yeah. But then also I guess. And maybe they did figure this out, but I don't know how you learn the difference of the history of one brick versus the other. And I imagine they're very similar histories.
Well, I don't
So-
think you actually write the history. She was just describing what she was seeing.
Oh, see, I thought it was a history assignment.
I mean, it probably was, but he said just describe the first brick.
Okay, yeah, then all right, I'm into that. But I'm just thinking like I could see, if your assignment was all right, write me a history on Main Street of downtown. Like you bet, and I give you the origin of the manufacturing of the bricks on one of these buildings, I'd probably get an F, right?
I don't
Because
think
they're
so.
like well, it depends on your
If you
teacher.
wanted a
but-
grade,
That,
you
that
probably
would be a
could
really
get it.
original essay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, all right. So maybe the example is less facetious than I thought. But the takeaway is that if you're tasked with looking at something in a way that is wholly original, you somehow, well, not somehow, but you find yourself able to be remarkably inspired and able to actually generate thoughts rather than just try and find new ways to put stuff that someone else has already said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way it ends here is the quote that I finally pulled out. I'm not going to bother reading the rest of what I pulled out because you summed it up very well. The end quote was, "She was blocked because she was trying to repeat in her writing things she had already heard. She couldn't think of anything to write about Bozeman because she couldn't recall anything she had heard worth repeating. She was strangely unaware that she could look and see freshly for herself, as she wrote without primary regard for what had been said before. The narrowing down to one brick destroyed the blockage because it was so obvious she had to do some original and direct seeing." Which, yeah, good parable about looking at things yourself rather than, sticking to cache thoughts and regurgitating other things people have said.
Yeah, and what's fun is this one gives you virtually no instruction on how to do an original seeing, and I feel like it's a lot easier to think that you've done one than actually have done one.
I feel like it's kind of explicitly saying break it down into the smallest components.
I think that's one way for sure. I guess you could also do an original seeing on the origin of the United States if you just look at it from a different angle, right? And that might feel like a wholly original thing rather than saying, well, in 16 whatever Columbus found blah blah, and just start from there. If you were to take it from the 5, 10, 15,000 years ago of the ice bridge, and start maybe with the native populations, or you could even just do like the history of the geography or something, right? Like I guess what I was saying is you can do original. I would think you could do an original seeing on a big thing, but you're right, being as reductionist as possible with it and breaking it down. That sounds pretty cool. And hell, if you were to do an original seeing on the bricks, you could get all the way back to the Big Bang, right?
Yeah.
And you could even get there fairly quickly, and then you could summarize from there to the actual brick.
To bake an apple pie, you must first create the universe.
Oh my god, I haven't heard that quote in at least 5 years.
I used to have this framed.
That's a classic Carl Sagan.
Yeah, I used to have this framed piece of artwork of Carl Sagan baking a pie with like the galaxy behind him and that quote on it.
I love it.
And he was like wearing an apron, and it was, gotta see if I can find a print of that again.
I gotta say, this whole post is also very applicable to anyone trying to do art, at least in my experience. Because when you're like, I have a blank piece of paper and I can write anything or I can draw anything, where do you even fucking start? But then like you see a story contest or prompt or whatever that says, we want 5,000 words on mermaids that kill puppies, and like you're like, oh yeah, okay, I can do something with that, just putting those restrictions on you, and it can't have the color purple anywhere in it, something like that. The more restrictions it puts on you, the more you're like, okay, cool, I got something to chew on and go with.
Yeah,
and it can force you into making something wholly original. Yeah, there was I think it's not active anymore, but it's called the Rattle Fiction podcast, or Rattle Fic, where the host would read short rationalist stories.
Okay.
And so you can find that on iTunes or maybe on the website, and I had to find the RSS feed myself. But I listened to The Last Christmas on there, and I happened to discover it around Christmas. I'd had this feed open, or I had this podcast, whatever, on my phone for years before I found that. And then I listened to, I think it's called True Love's Kiss by Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Okay.
Classic kind of reverse Cinderella thing.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But without giving away the ending. It's not like
Such a
exactly
good
a spoiler,
ending.
but it's just fun. And it's like, oh, well, okay, now I get it. The girl's fiance or something falls into a magic-induced coma, a la Sleeping Beauty, and only true love's kiss, like uninhibited by anything else, like just pure love can wake him. And it doesn't work for her, doesn't work for his parents. And so she kind of is like soliciting the town. And it's like, please, I'm not ashamed. If anyone loves him, can you guys just try? Even if you don't, can we just line up everybody in the town? And like, they're kind of not into it.
Yeah.
So that it was, all right, how do I do I'm kind of guessing on the author's thought. In fact, I think it was in the notes of the story. But it was like, how do I do this story told in an original way? And it's not, a breathtaking new angle on it, but it's a fun new angle and it's a quick story.
It is. And it's explicitly rationalist because, yeah, she does start thinking of all the various ways she could hack at this problem,
Right.
which other people are like, no, man, we're not lining up everyone to kiss him. Do you think that would actually happen? That the rest of the town would just be like, no, and not do it?
Yes, I think that there's no way. I mean,
We couldn't get people to wear masks during a pandemic.
God damn it.
People
Yes,
need
you're right.
incentives, generally.
but like if it was a smaller, tighter community, maybe. I mean, because how are you going to line up everyone in Denver to kiss an unconscious person?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do it, especially if I didn't know him. But that's part of the point. It has to be true love or something.
Yeah.
But then given today's
But
limits, you could find like a yogi or something who just loves everybody, right?
And part of the conceit there was supposed to be that like maybe someone secretly loved him, and
Exactly.
that is why like her kiss didn't work because someone loved him even more, but in secret. And so if everyone in town has to kiss him, there's plausible deniability. Whereas if just like one person goes up and kisses him, everyone would be like, "Oh, John had a secret crush on him the whole time. Stone him!"
Right. So yeah, original seeing, I like it. It's interesting to think about because I think it's easy to say, well, I've done the work, I did an original thought on this, but I find that it's easy to encounter people, including like myself, where it's like, yep, I did it, and then I arrive at the conclusion that everyone else has, or even everyone else in my subgroup. So it's
I hate having stupid epiphanies. I find that like happens a lot in therapy, where it's something that like you say and it was the most obvious fucking thing in the world, and it's like, I just had another stupid epiphany.
I think that sounds valuable. I mean,
it is.
I occasionally come to realizations that like, oh, I could have realized that 5 years ago. But hey, better late than never.
Mhm.
So I guess I what I meant is that when I said it doesn't give like instruction is I don't quite know, other than like having had an original thought, how I would know if I've done this practice properly. But maybe that's not really the point. Also, it's the short initial post on it, right? So
Yeah.
he gets a bit more into it in the next one.
He does. Speaking of which,
How to seem and be deep.
yes. Okay, so he starts out with this cool, not starts out, but there's a cool quote at the front. A fanatic is someone who can't change his mind and won't change the subject. He says, I endeavor to at least be capable of changing the subject.
You would think he would also never be capable of changing his mind because he's supposed to be a good Bayesian, right?
Yeah.
But it was just a funny rejoinder to that.
Yes.
Yeah, the fanaticism.
It's a cute quote. But yeah, he was talking about how he was at a place where people were just talking, more in deep kind of stuff. And a lot of people were talking about death and that death gives meaning to life and death is really a blessing in disguise. And he was apparently like the only transhumanist there. And he tried not to be fanatical or something, but would like push back very cautiously sometimes about how generally, death is not a great thing. And that it's just not a thing that we should valorize.
He specifically phrased it, he says cautiously, as transhumanists generally positive on life, but thumbs down on death.
Yeah.
Which I guess apparently several people came up to him afterwards and said it was really deep.
Yeah.
I like
It's
that.
like,
That's
well,
very
yes, I am, but this got me thinking about what makes people seem deep. Eliezer.
Yeah. I like too that, thumbs down on death, thumbs up on life is like a very like soft way of putting it. And that's, great way to break the ice on that subject to somebody, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, no, thumbs down on that subject actually. What? Yeah.
But yeah, he as you said, he was like trying to figure out why did people think that he was really deep, and he was going over some of these interactions. There was one woman who said that when I have a nice thing to say about someone, now I try to say to them right away instead of waiting, because you never know when someone's going to die, and then you wouldn't have been able to tell them the thing, and you want the last thing they heard from you to be a nice thing, right? And he said at one point, that is a beautiful thought, and even if someday the threat of death is lifted from you, I hope you will keep doing it. Which, cool. And then someone else spoke about some benefit, X of death, and he doesn't remember what the benefit was. And he replied with, given human nature, if people got hit on the head with a baseball bat every week, pretty soon they would invent reasons why getting hit on the head with a baseball bat was a good thing. But if you took someone who wasn't being hit on the head with a baseball bat and asked them if they wanted it, they would say no. I think if you took someone who was immortal and asked them if they wanted to die for benefit X, they would say no.
Yeah, and that sounds like the kind of an application of the original seeing, right? Where like, okay, let's take this and remove the context and just say, is this a good thing? Everything else aside, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and when you phrase it that way, no.
Yeah.
How could you possibly sell somebody on an 8-decade lifespan or a I don't know. I mean,
Especially when the last 3-4 decades of that, your body's slowly disintegrating and getting worse.
yeah, I mean, and then I'm trying to think of like other non-easy targets, you know, like or even ones that like don't sound deliberately edgy, but all my thoughts are like politics, right?
What
So,
about
like,
euthanasia?
yeah, maybe. Or like, I mean, just the way that our democracy works in the U.S. or something, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, sure, it's maybe it's the canned phrase from Franklin about like it's the worst system of government there is, except for all the other ones. But or whether one of the founders was supposed to have said that. It's just like
I thought it was Churchill.
I feel like it was. Oh no, Franklin said like they when allegedly. When they come out of the courthouse in Pennsylvania and they're like, what sort of government have you given us? It was like a democracy if you can keep it, I think was the quote I was thinking of Franklin.
I'm amazed that we've kept it this long.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is like, I think it sounds like a great idea, but like if you look at it with fresh eyes and just look at what you've got, I think he uses the example in the other post, or maybe even in this one about education and lost purposes. That's a good easy example. Like, what does college look like? Well, I'm getting an education so I can get a good job. And it's like, are you doing either of those things when you're sitting there learning 12th century underwater basket weaving?
Yeah,
To
and
pass
you are
your
not.
test. And like for the most part, no. Trade schools are tight. Yeah. That's like where, hey, I'm here to learn this so I can get a job doing this. You betcha. And there are like actual schools that do that sort of thing, not just like software boot camps. You can do that for like automotive repair and everything, right?
Yeah, but those are low class.
Yeah, they're low class. We'll get there.
Hold
but,
that thought. I
most
don't
fun
think
is
we're
that.
done with.
No. I shouldn't transition yet.
No, you're good. I guess what I'm getting at is that like people, and this is explicitly why I went to college, was 75%, probably more if I'm being honest, was a sense of social inadequacy. I wasn't doing anything with my life, and it became especially stark when I bumped into somebody from high school, and they're like, "I thought you'd be doing something more interesting." I'm like, "Fuck me, you're right." And so I'm like, "Well, what's a good answer to say? What are you doing? Oh, people who are in school. Oh, I'm going to college. That's what I'm doing. That's the entire reason I went. That's the overwhelming majority of the reason. I can't think of. I mean, I guess I sort of went there to learn stuff, but. And like I tried to pick something that I was actually interested in, that I felt like I was going to do something with. I got an undergraduate degree in science of psychology, and I say science because most schools it's a liberal art major. So I had to take some science classes, and realized my second semester in, because I already had my undergraduate or my whatever core credits out of the way from community college, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually super boring. Turns out reading psychology research is a lot of fun. Doing it is insanely boring. And this will not be fun for me. So I realized immediately, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. But I'm here. As long as I'm in school, I can at least tell people I'm in school. That's what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah. I went because I knew from, I don't even know how long, as far back as I can remember, so at least elementary school, that that was the life path. You do really good in school, then you do really good in high school so that you can get into a college, and then you do good in college, and then you get a job. Like, there was just no question ever about it. Going to college was part of the life track. And then, yeah, I dropped out after 1 year when I was like, this is shit and I don't want to do it.
And I'm not doing what I wanted. It's like, this isn't actually advanced. It's once like you're at college age, after you've been old enough to sign the loans, that's when you start to like come online enough as a person to realize like, wait, this isn't actually advancing my personal agenda of like self-actualization towards what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But since you get to sign those loan papers at 17, you're not, at least when you're me, you're not really a sentient person yet. And you're like, oh, great, I'm in debt, and I guess I'm already here, so.
Might as well finish it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so he, upon further reflection, figured out, or at least suspected, that he came across as deep because he coherently violated a cached pattern of deep wisdom in a way that made immediate sense. Because there's this stereotype of deep wisdom. That death, complete the pattern. Complete the pattern. Death gives meaning to life. Okay, I guess I'll do it.
No, we're all looking at like screens, and you're looking around at us.
Yeah. Everyone knows this is the standard, deeply wise response, but they will not be surprised. It carries no experience or insight. One might call it belief in wisdom. And yeah, that was his point. That everyone knows it's wise, but not surprising at all. And he was surprising.
They may even say, what deep wisdom, perhaps in hope of being thought deep themselves.
But he also points out that like the transhumanist school of thought has its own cached thoughts there.
Yeah.
And this is where it's like, yep, I've done my original seeing and I've come to the exact same conclusion as the transhumanists.
Yep.
Death, complete the pattern. Death is a bummer that we should get, or death is a pointless tragedy that we should do our best to get rid of.
Yeah.
And it's like, that sound all original because fewer people think that way. And it doesn't mean that it's the wrong idea. I think that's the tough part. You just kind of gotta like dig around and think and like, okay, yes, I happen to have come to the same conclusion as my peer group, but I'm kind of wary of that fact because, is this some social pressure, me trying to make sure that I fit on the same like intellectual level as them, or is it like, is this my actual thought? There was another key component to seeming deep, which was that if you're conveying, because I guess there's two components. One, you have to have all these thoughts cached in advance because that's where every good thought comes from. Yeah. Generating thoughts on the fly sounds like me rambling on in a sentence and you sound like an idiot.
Yes.
And
yeah, he said that he already had all these thought patterns as automatically as he breathes.
Exactly. And then the other thing is to be able to convey them with minimum inferential distance. I think he specifies one step, but I think if you could do a couple and still sound really deep.
Yeah. He said that was the hard part.
Yeah.
The part that made him seem deep was being able to just have that one inferential step rather than be bizarre out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've heard people who say long things that sound bizarre out of nowhere because they haven't conveyed the distance and they just sound dumb or insane. Yeah. And it's like that might be a real coherent thought, but you've not bridged that crevice for me.
And he pointed out that transhumanism is like got its own whole coherent philosophy that many people have spent a lot of time thinking about and making cohere. And so the fact that he was able to present a unified, coherent thought was very important because it wasn't just original; it was also original and made sense internally.
Right.
It made sense to the listener too.
Yeah.
And it was like more than just one thought. Like you can have a deep sentence that you got cached somewhere, but then someone asks you to expand on it, and you've got nothing. You clearly reveal yourself to have just like, And this is something that, God, I mean, it doesn't have to be a smart thought, but like a random cache thought that if I think about this, like dinner party I went to a few years ago, once every couple of months, and it's like we're playing what's that? Cards Against Humanity. And I mentioned this in the context of other posts with like applause lights and everything, but it would be somebody would throw in some random jab about, oh yeah, America is the worst, and basically get a round of applause. But if you ask them to expand on that, they can't. And it's like, well, why? What specifically? Racism. And it's like, well, okay, sure, but like
no other country has that.
Yeah, we invented it. Speaking of, I saw SNL this morning, and it was the guy from Get Out.
Okay.
And it was a bummer because he's remarkably unfunny. And like most SNL episodes have like one or two good
main
sketches.
Character from Get Out.
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
I forget the guy's name.
Yeah.
But like his opening sketch was like, oh, I know, because he's British, and he's like, I know what you're thinking. He's British. Oh no, he's not black. Don't worry, I'm black and British. And it's like, we all know who Idris Elba is. Like we're aware that this can happen. But
there's also a thing right now where the capital B letter black applies only to American people who are descended from slaves or something. Like there's a whole new woke vocabulary around that.
I'm lucky I don't buy the woke dictionary and read it then, because I remember years ago like being confused that African American is what you're supposed to call black people.
Right.
I'll call anyone who what they want to them, but if I'm talking about a group, because at the time most black people I knew weren't African American in any guise. Yeah. One was Jamaican, one was French Canadian, and it's like, so calling you African American is like, oh, you're black, you must be from Africa, right? It felt so condescending to me.
Yeah.
And
calling black people from other countries African American is
that was the last straw. Was I saw something about African American British actor Idris Elba being considered for James Bond. Okay. And I'm like, African American British actor. Okay, yeah, this is nonsense. It wasn't just me. Great. Yeah. So anyway, I brought that up because a lot of his stuff was those sort of just like random quick jokes about like, oh, don't worry, I can't think of any examples. Point is, it was like applause lights, but it's like almost a deep thought, but it's like there's no substance to it, and you can tell, or many people can tell, I think, that it's like, oh yeah, there's this is just a shiny coat of paint and there's nothing underneath it.
Good comedy is actually subversive, which I guess often means that it is an original thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it wasn't just the jokes. I think, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's I'm not sure if the guests write their own monologues or what. Let's see. Was there anything else on seeming and being deep? Like having a coherent philosophy that's easy to explain and non-typical seems to be the one sentence summary, right?
Yeah. He did also point out that an economist once remarked that popular audiences are so unfamiliar with standard economics that when he was called upon to make a television appearance, he just needed to repeat back Econ 101 in order to sound like a brilliantly original thinker. This was written about 15 years ago, this post. Do you think this is still true? That's still true?
I have this experience with anyone I try to talk to about economics who's not like in this circle directly.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, we're in our bubble so much that like it seems like the sanity water line is up, but that's because we're just swimming in the deep end, maybe. Or the shallow end, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But, and it's not to say everyone's dumb. It's just like, you know, in fairness, you know, most people haven't heard an Econ 101 lecture. And so they hear stuff, and it's kind of like the joke, there was one of this on like American Dad where the daughter's like in her first week of college, and she says something about something, and oh, how's that Psych 101 class teaching you? Well, it's only been a week, but I know how the whole world works now. And it's like that sort of that the joke there is that like these are original thoughts that you haven't had, you know, that you haven't been exposed to yet.
Yeah.
And it, you know, sounds deep and profound and smart, and in a way it is because it's new to you.
Yeah.
But it's not like this is not the edge of humanity's grasp of the subject, right? It's just yours.
I have, over the last 15 years, started to see more and more of the death is a bad thing idea seeping into popular culture. Is that just me looking for it, or is this actually a thing that's happening? I mean, we still get a whole bunch of deathist crap in the media, but every now and then, I see something that really makes me hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's a positive trend. I mean, I remember we talked to Eliezer about this a few years ago, back when Harris was hinting that he was going to write a book on AI. Mm-hmm. And I'd asked him, I was like, you know, it seems like more and more conversation about AI I don't know if we caught him on a bad day or if he actually feels this way, but I was like, it seems like more and more conversations these days about AI are less about like the Terminator and more about like actual content.
Yeah.
And he just said twice, because I think I reiterated the question, he's like, I am not optimistic or hopeful about, you know, the public conversation on this or something.
Okay.
And maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe he's definitely, you know, he's got his ear to the floor there more than I do, but I feel like it's more positive. More conversations coming down from people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and, you know, names that people listen to aren't talking about the threat of bipedal robots shooting us in the face, right?
Yeah.
It's like...
Or saying just unplug it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know, came around completely on that, right? And he's a popular science figure, so...
Well, that's because... I don't know. That's because AI exists now. We're going to have self-driving cars. We have GPT-3. There's some really cool services now using it. Like, I'll have to see if I can find the service and put it in show notes, but there is a GPT-3 powered article writing software now where you just tell it, like, I want to write an article for this kind of blog and on this subject, and add in quotes from this thing, and like, I don't know, just sort of, you can make it as detailed or easy as you want, and then just be like generate, and it'll like generate a title, and then it'll start writing.
Nice.
And I haven't tinkered with it yet. I think it might be for pay, but yeah, there's a few things out there like that now that I've seen people tinker around with and do reviews of, and they look pretty powerful. Still not quite as good as a human article writer, but like,
one human article writer can now do the work of 10 just by
Yeah.
using that and culling, tightening up a little. He ends, so all of that was about how to seem to be deep, to read about non-standard philosophies that are well thought out. He said to actually be deep, you got to think for yourself about what's wise or important, and it's not necessarily coming up with an unusual answer, but it does mean seeing for yourself, and links back to the previous post, rather than letting your brain complete the pattern. So his key points to this is don't stop at the first answer, cast out replies that you see as vaguely unsatisfactory, and spend a lot of time on it, because if you keep mulling over the stuff for a while, eventually your thoughts may form a coherent whole.
Yeah. In time, your thoughts will form a coherent whole, flowing from the single source of yourself, rather than being fragmentary repetitions of other people's conclusions. Just wanted to
It's funny
read
because
that sentence, because it's good.
I like that too. It's fun because I don't know if I'm getting there. I'd have to, do another deep dive on all my beliefs. So give me 10 minutes because I don't have that many. For the most part, most of what I believe is amalgamations of what I try to synergize from other other thoughts that have come to me from other sources, and then I try to make something fresh out of the combination thereof, right? And that's still original, but it's I didn't make the ingredients. I just made something new out of it, right?
Well, literally everything is a remix.
I mean, yeah, but you can independently discover something, right?
Yeah.
And so that can be, yes, someone else already had this thought, but you didn't know that. It came to you fresh.
Right.
No doubt, I don't know who...
But it's always, sparked by or outgrowths of other things that you've already run across or that you already know.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not sure who gets credit for being the founder of the transhumanist school of thought, but they're no doubt the first person to think that death is bad, right?
Right.
I think that this article is not saying original thoughts have to be wholly original. It has to be original from your brain. But like not, I'm the first person who's ever thought this thing. Yeah. Like that was sort of the distinction between seeming and being deep.
I do think it's really important that he says oftentimes you will just get the standard answer because, if you have to find a non-standard answer in order to feel like you've won, then that leads you down into conspiracy theory land.
Yeah, you're going to have to be completely nuts. Mm-hmm. Most things, the common accepted wisdom is probably true, right?
Yeah. All right. For next week, we are reading The Logical Fallacy of Generalization from Fictional Evidence.
I just talked to Rachel about that yesterday.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Or at least it's a fun one. And hold off on proposing solutions. All right, we should actually get to the topic, though.
Yeah, so we are talking about the... I'm on the wrong mailbox. Primary.
A modest proposal for Republicans, or was it the book review?
I mean, it's...
About just the whole... How about...
It's class stuff in general based around that, yeah.
Astral Codex 10's essays on class.
Right. I keep forgetting it's Astral Codex 10.
Just call it Codex.
That works.
I don't know. ACT runs... I mean, it's already an acronym, but SSC was, so ingrained for so long. But
yeah, it's going to be hard to change.
There was a book review we did a few months ago on...
And it's not ACT, it's ACX.
Huh?
Well, I look at the word 10.
I know, but I guess, I don't know if this is supposed to be in group signaling or a marker of higher class that use Roman numerals, but...
Well, the website is astralcodexten.com. If you wanted it to be Astral Codex X and say 10, then you could have done that.
That would have been just 2 X's.
But everybody abbreviates it as ACX.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're all doing it however they want,
Okay.
All right. So there's a 1983 book called, Class, A Guide Through the American Status System.
Right.
And that was some months ago? Or was this before or after his post on
February 24th.
Okay, there we go.
I can't remember which one came first. I guess I can just check.
The Trump one was after that. Or the Republican one was after that.
Yeah, so it was... it was the day after. Okay. So I thought that it was like a while ago he read this book, then he kind of put together this original thing, but I guess he was doing them at the same time. I recommend reading the book review of by Fussell. I'm assuming Fussell.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Fussell.
I don't know. It was just fun. Like the guy.
He writes great book reviews.
And even so Alexander writes great book reviews. I don't know if I could recommend the book to people just based on the review, but I can recommend the review to people based on the review itself. Apparently the guy, it's hard to tell when he's being serious or not, but he's basically trying to decide like, all right, what does upper class and middle class and lower class look like? Mm-hmm. And I think his definitions are probably slightly too constrained, which he talks about a bit when he's Alexander talks about when he's responding to it a bit. Mm-hmm. I guess Scott talks about it. I said Scott, Alexander, whatever.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
He has 2 first names.
That's right. ACX talks about... See, that's just terrible.
That's awful.
Anyway, where do we want to start with this?
Well...
Good question.
So I want to start actually way before this, but we'll jump into it in just a second. Remember when we had that episode about the 4 settler groups in America?
Mm-hmm.
Albion Seed,
that's right.
Another excellent book review.
It is. This reminded me a lot of that because I think Scott has been leading up to this for quite a while, or maybe it's just been an evolving line of thinking on his point.
No, I was going to bring that up in response to these subjects because as I was reading them, I kept being put in mind of earlier essays on politics that he had written.
And I think finally now he's like getting to the big reveal. The prestige part of the magic show.
Or he's like at least discovered another component of it.
Could be, yeah.
Like
that's true. He's probably like learning as he's writing. But
is this an original thought? I think it is.
The hand with the butterfly,
yeah,
which our listeners couldn't see, but yeah. So yeah, I mean like that. I guess what it comes down to is that culture is really important and culture matters, and class is basically another type of culture. It's
or there's a cultural component to class.
A strong culture. I think not just a strong cultural component. I think class is basically just culture because he makes the argument here that you don't have to be rich to be upper class, and you can be extremely rich and still be middle class or lower class.
Yeah, there's maybe some distinction about like class also being your beliefs and values.
Yeah, which is culture.
But yeah, it's just
So he says
I'm
that
trying to think. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of examples of things that aren't in struggling, but gone.
in the book, Fussel's book, he says that upper class is old money. The people that you think of as rich and famous, whether they're tech billionaires or celebrities or whatever, are not upper class, because to be upper class, you have to inherit your money. If you know about the upper class, it's probably only because you know their ancestors, like Rockefellers or
Ford.
Yeah, Ford, Carnegie. The real upper class is not showy, and I think partly that's just a defense mechanism. It's much harder to, loot the wealthy when you don't know who the wealthy are.
There's this whole other. I think this wasn't Alexander, although it might have been, essay about fashion in fashion and class, where sort of if you divide class into 4 categories, it was previously the upper class, like the aristocrats, sort of setting the fashion standards that would trickle down. But when we got the fast fashion industry, the elites started, like Mark Zuckerberg, started just wearing hoodies.
Yeah.
It was too easy for the lower classes to copy the rich back when you had an expensive well-bound corset and somebody would have to save up for a very long time to get that, or painstakingly craft one themselves, and by the time they had one, the aristocrats had already moved on. But now as soon as you see a celebrity wearing a particular t-shirt, China will crank out thousands of them.
Yeah.
He could wear one the next day. So I guess they tried to win. Currently the strategy is win the game by not playing.
Right. I don't remember if it was this post, but he put pictures side by side of Trump's residence, where everything looks like it came out of fucking 14th century France, gilded and crazy shit. And God, who's the? Oh God, the name is slipping me right now. But he's the hedge fund manager, really rich dude.
There's a few of those.
That's true. Okay. I don't remember.
The Koch brothers, or
no, it wasn't the Koch brothers.
We got it. Richie McRich guy.
Yeah, extremely rich upper class dude, and
Had
showed a
what,
picture
like a
of
really
his house.
minimalist
And it was,
house?
yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have guessed that it was his house.
Yeah, I thought it was actually kind of...
Oh, Sam Walton, maybe, because he lives modestly.
No,
All right,
no.
fair enough. It's not in the post, so.
But yeah, the point is that to be upper class, you have to have already been born into a lot of money and be raised in that culture from birth, basically.
Yeah, and I like, there's some pushback in the, so we're talking about the book review.
Mm-hmm.
That's Fusel's definition. I like how there's some pushback on that from Alexander later on, because I don't know if that is a distinction really worth keeping. I mean, if I'm old money, but I've got $10 million, and you're new money, but you've got $40 billion, at that point, it's not about the money so much as it is just the signaling aspect, right? What do I do with my time and money?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can kind of see that, but I don't know what it would.
There's definitely gatekeeping where old
Yes.
money considers itself to be basically the aristocratic class. People
Yeah.
with new money don't fit into that culture because they just haven't grown up in it, so they didn't learn all the nuances.
Which is what one of America's worst classic books is about.
Is that Gatsby?
Yes. Where he's like, I'm rich, but I can't buy my way into the upper class. Woe is me.
Yeah, sucks to be you, man.
Yeah.
There's also a good book that illustrates this well that I thought was a lot of fun. Just because I was like, oh, it's these people from Tana French's The Likeness. The people who all live in that house, especially the guy who inherited it. They're all doing the full upper class lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, they're doing it even though they don't have that much money.
Right. You don't have to have money to be upper class. You
Right.
just have to have come from that culture and have those values.
And the other one defining characteristic is they're never trying to prove anything because they have nothing to prove.
Yes.
And so they don't give a shit. And they're not throwing nice parties because nice parties would show that I have to prove that I have money to throw nice parties and I have nothing to prove.
Right.
So they'll throw boring parties, much like Gatsby, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that they had nice champagne or something, but no price tags on it or something, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, he says also that Jeff Bezos, for all his billions, is only upper middle class at best because he still had to work to get that money.
Yeah. And I think at the point,
Lazy.
I guess, yeah.
Working.
And I think the reason I'm I just don't like necessarily that hard line is because I don't know what the useful distinction is then saying, all right, yeah, so we've got old money. It doesn't matter how much money you have. That's this own separate group. But is Bezos out there trying to demonstrate his wealth to people and doing any of the things that upper middle class people do?
No, I don't think he does.
Not really. So
No.
then all of his behaviors also indicate or also indicate upper class.
I do not think his behaviors indicate upper class.
Well, if he's doing the one thing, which is not trying to prove anything to anybody.
Well, no, he's working.
He's not performatively
He
not trying to prove anything.
Right. He
if that
cares
makes
that
sense.
his business is successful and that he, keeps it growing.
Oh, right. Because I guess if you're the real upper class, you're not even maintaining a business anymore. You're just riding on the coattails of your ancestors who gave you money.
Yeah, living off interest or something.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. I guess I find that an almost an arbitrarily niche group, but that's fine for the purpose of.
Like,
I don't think they are. I think those are large groups.
And I think you don't necessarily need to even not care about anything. What was the guy I just heard about on the Doofcast? The guy who did the Coraline movie or funded it anyway. He's the son of the Kellogg
Wait,
fortune.
Tim Burton?
No, not Tim Burton. The guy who financed it. He's the son of the Kellogg's fortune, and he spends all his time and a lot of his money just making stop motion movies that are beautiful and usually almost nobody sees, and that's just all he cares about. And that's interesting. It's a niche interest. He's doing something. He's making the world richer, but it's like he's not doing it for the money. He the money doesn't even come into a consideration. He's just kind of living his life.
He's just patronizing the arts.
But
Yeah.
the fact that he's working hard doesn't seem to indicate upper class, right?
But-
He should be sitting around doing nothing but sniffing expensive wine all day.
That's where I still get squinty-eyed at it, where I'm like, people. That was another thing that I guess aristocratic classes are known to do: patronize the arts.
Yeah, and he's a hobbyist.
It's like I support patronizing the arts. I actually think it would be awesome if there were if we could shift culture to be a lot more how you can display that you have lots of money, make a charitable foundation like the Against Malaria Foundation, or even patronize the arts.
No, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
That would be great, but also I think that is a sign of the middle class because you're trying to.
Because you're showing you care about something.
Yeah, exactly. I had no idea that this guy even existed. He just makes these movies and stuff because he enjoys it.
But that's where I found the distinction kind of arbitrary. He works hard because he cares about stuff.
Well,
But
yeah, but
that
he
seems to
enjoys
indicate
it.
that. Yeah, but that seems to indicate that he's doing stuff, right? And he cares about doing a good job.
Yeah,
I thought
I think you're allowed to be a hobbyist.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I guess the book review, Fusel was not crazy clear on to me what it actually entailed. It seems to be explicitly, I have money, I don't have to do anything.
Right,
I think it is really hard to define, and that's probably why the book seems so vague. Can we Can I read the paragraph about flowers?
Yes.
This is actually the one right after he says, Fussell, a lot of things really. Sometimes it's hard to know whether to take him seriously. What is one to make of paragraphs like, anyone imagining that just any sort of flowers can be presented in front of a house without status jeopardy would be wrong. Upper middle class flowers are rhododendrons, tiger lilies, amaryllis, columbine, clematis, and roses, except for bright red ones. And that freaked me out because I was like, that was my grandmother's garden. The rhododendrons and the tiger lilies. One way to learn which flowers are vulgar is to notice the varieties favored on Sunday morning TV religious programs, like Rex Humberds or Robert Schuller's. There you'll see primarily geraniums, red or lower than pink, poinsettias and chrysanthemums, and you know instantly, without even attending to the quality of the discourse, that you're looking at a high prole setup.
Sure, dude. You know instantly.
Other
because you can
prole
name
flowers,
all the flowers you're
include
looking
anything too vividly red, like red tulips. Declassed also are phlox, zinnias, salvia, gladioli, begonias, dahlias, fuchsias, and petunias. Members of the middle class will sometimes hope to mitigate the vulgarity of bright red flowers by planting them in a rotting wheelbarrow or a rowboat displayed on the front lawn, but seldom with success. And then there's another whole paragraph about desks, and then another one about what time you eat dinner.
Yeah.
And I think this is definitely pointing at something because I have family members that fall into these different classes, and I as a kid was always super confused by it until I finally learned about signaling, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah, see, I have dinner at 9:30, so I'm upper class. Does it matter that I'm eating freezer waffles off a paper plate in bed? That doesn't sound very high class, but the time sure does.
I mean, I think it has to be a confluence of various, indicators.
It seems like what's going on is that we have these stereotypes about what things belong to which class, some of which are true and some of which aren't.
Yeah.
And maybe they were true at one time, but just it's all shifted, and we're still kind of stuck in the 1950s stereotypes because we started portraying them that way during that time period on TV and whatnot.
And Fusel gets to signal his class by being able to list off at a glance 30 different kinds of flowers.
Right.
Where I'm like, I think that's a rose. And like that's about it as far as my plant skills go. Oh wait, I know what a spider mom looks
I don't
like.
know if knowing flowers is upper class.
I think having and this
Yeah,
is,
any old gardener could know flowers.
but yeah, maybe flowers, but I think there's something about knowing a lot about something that doesn't matter that signals upper class. Or at least signals upper middle. That's why I don't like. It seems like the middle encompasses basically everything, and
Well, I think
upper
the
classes,
middle and the lower encompass basically everything. But that's also kind of the point, right?
but the middle covers everything from like, Jeff Bezos to basically not a factory worker, right? And so that I don't so much like Fusel's hard lines, but I like the general points that come across from this.
Yeah.
But anyway, like if you're the kind of person who knows a lot about fonts, which you might bump into if you do.
I do.
Right.
But I was
But you
a
have
professional graphics designer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, professional interest, I think, gets rid of the class from it or something. But fonts or whatever, different hues of paint or like I
I'm
don't
feeling
know.
really called out here.
Sub,
I know
sub,
lots
sub,
of shit
sub,
about useless stuff.
sub varieties of wine. I'm not calling out. I'm just saying that like I feel like this is a way. If I knew a lot about wine, right? If I could write a book on it, all that does is signal to people. Well, one thing that does is signal to people that I have so much free time that I can spend it accruing all of this useless knowledge. And that suggests to you that this person doesn't need to spend all their time working. Mm-hmm. If they can know this much about wine, it's because they don't work so many hours that they can't read books on wine or something, right?
Right. Well, and I think also a lot of it is also the attitude. Like, I don't think Jeff Bezos could ever be in that sort of aristocratic elite area, but like his kids probably could if they spent their lives immersed in that culture with their, they bought their way into those neighborhoods and they had those peers and they went to those schools and they didn't have to do work. Or, if they did, like, you can be an inheritor to a large company and keep running it and still be super upper class if you don't really get your hands dirty. Like, his kids could be there. I just don't think he ever would.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm just willing to just leave all that aside because I get the distinction that it's making, but I don't know if it again, I like how Jace put it, makes me squint, but not enough to hold up the conversation on it anymore. So
yeah,
I'll just take it for granted for the sake of the discussion.
Yeah. He does say that the middle class is marked by status and anxiety. Upper middle class, like people like Jeff Bezos, have already made it, so they're fine. They aren't anxious. But the middle class actually is pretty anxious about their situation. And
I like that a lot because that's where it's like, and so at some point throughout the book review, it's like after the flowers bit, and he's like, so that all sounds, I'm paraphrasing, kind of crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Why does he get to decide which flowers mean what? But this is where it starts to get scary, and he lists off like another passage about, it might have been how he separates
Super Bowl parties,
and a couple of other things, and it's like those are all spot on. And this is a 40-year-old book.
Yeah.
Contempt for clothing with obvious brand names. Lists of grammatical pet peeves.
I feel called out by the brand names thing because I've always hated brand names on clothes. I've like been if I'm going to advertise your product, you should pay me.
Same.
Yeah, but now I'm like,
really
I guess I'm middle class. I don't know. That's what I thought. Maybe it's just because this is what I've been taught by my class.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to our original thoughts and seeming deep, where I think you do kind of have to deconstruct your own preferences.
And that's just where I don't get, like, this guy just decided this, right? So I mean,
I think
it's
he
an interesting take on
observed it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that there might be good or bad reasons to like not want to wear a Nike t-shirt, right?
Well, I mean, it could be like, if we're being a little more introspective about it, we see people that we consider of a lower class and they proudly wear these brands, they're always flashing their brands.
Yeah, so your only
And you're
exposure
like,
to it is tackiness.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't want to be like
status
that.
anxiety.
So I won't wear those symbols. And, then you're like, oh shit, I'm a classist piece of shit too.
I think that there's, because I mean, if you read if you read the book review, and I'm sure if you read the entire book, you're going to fall into these groups, right? So I don't feel like feeling called out and be like, oh no, I fit in this pattern. I don't think you should feel bad about it because he's describing at least he's at least brushing on like every aspect of human life, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to fall into these groups.
Yeah. And
I guess I don't know what, if it does mean that, having a preference about whether or not you wear Adidas brand clothing with the word Adidas on it, if that makes you classist or not, but like then just don't care about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds me of the conversations that people always inevitably have after learning about signaling in economics for the first time, where you start seeing it everywhere, and then you see yourself doing it, and then you go, oh no, everything's signaling! Even counter-signaling is a type of signaling!
I had a friend
And it's
ask
like, yeah, just, but that's what humans do. It's not good or bad. Like, move on.
I had the conversation with a friend a few years ago. He was talking about, is there any way for me to like tell my friends that I gave to charity that isn't signaling? And I'm like, there's no way to do anything that isn't signaling.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's sort of the point. Like,
You can't even be healthy without signaling something.
so like signaling isn't bad. It's just the explanation for a lot of human behavior, right? I think similar to this, in fact, all of this classism basically is signaling, right?
Yeah.
And
If you
so-
think of signaling as just a form of communication,
Yeah.
then like maybe you can try to, I don't know. I feel like people try to put moral judgments on this stuff when they first learn about class signaling and signaling in general, and it's that can be, I don't know, that can be an interesting topic for a bit, but
So everyone belongs in some kind of class. You just shouldn't be classist to people who aren't in yours.
Yeah.
Kind of like race. Everyone belongs to some kind of race. Just don't be a racist.
I think that in general, you can get right on you can be correct on basically all of these by just saying don't be a dick to people who don't like what you like, right?
Right, yeah.
yeah,
If someone likes
and maybe
something that
like
you-
the things you like for genuine reasons, or like
Yeah.
try to analyze that.
I mean, if someone likes something that you don't like, but they enjoy it, like just let them do it. If someone likes driving a Lamborghini, even though it's a complete waste of money and it costs $5,000 to get the brakes changed and all that nonsense, it's like if you like it, go nuts. Sure, you're sitting in traffic with the rest of us and your bottom of your car is scraping potholes because it's so low to the ground, but like that's you. If you're having a good time, go for it. If you like watching Desperate Housewives, have a great time, right?
Yeah.
If you like watching reruns of Marvel movies, don't shit on that person, right?
Yeah. And at the last class, I don't know, the third class is proles, short for proletariat. They do wage labor. High proles are skilled craft people like plumbers. Medium and low are more typically factory workers.
All right, I'm gonna be that person. Is it prol or proly?
Oh shit, I don't know, man.
I was saying proles when I was reading it in my
I've
head.
heard people pronouncing it proles. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with proles then. I'm sorry.
Well, you can say it however you want.
Yeah,
This
well,
is just
okay,
like-
I'm not sorry then, but I'll say it the right way. So there, proles. Like, is it plebs or plebes?
Yeah, I don't know.
I believe it's plebs, but I've heard it said both
I
ways.
think they're both. What's like the contractions of a full word?
Yeah.
I don't know if there is an official pronunciation,
Okay.
but
Well, no, proles is short for proletariat.
yeah.
I've never heard proletariat, so okay. Anyways, yeah, they really like mass culture, and they watch like Transformers and shit. And he points out that there's these classes, like there are three different ladders on which you can rise or fall. Like you can become really rich as a prole, and still, you can be Michael Bay, I guess. But you're still prole class, and you can be a super upper class person and just be destitute because you decided to go into, I don't know, 17th century art history and you know everything there is to know about that, and you live off the little bit of interest that you get every month from your parents, but it's barely enough to buy your cigarettes.
The dictionary only has the little line over the O on prole, so I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, what I really liked about this was that it demarcates income from class.
Yeah.
Like, social worker makes $40,000 a year, teacher makes $40,000 a year, but they're upper class because of their interests and like how they conduct themselves and their attitudes towards things.
How they vote, yeah, what they're signaling with their purchases.
And likewise, if you're a lumber baron and you make $400K a year, you're still low class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like a famous NASCAR driver.
Right.
Yeah.
They could be like, yeah, I think sports stars generally, like, you're kind of,
Usually you're coming from the low class.
that's a weird thing, actually.
But this is where like I get confused. So, like he talks about cruises as like vacations, and
Oh, and the people that would respond with, like, I would never take such a cookie cutter vacation. Like, I'm gonna go to Bali and ride a...
raft made out of sea turtles. Yeah,
Sure.
like for me, it's just like I don't get who decided. Was it just Russell? Did he observe that people felt this way about cruises?
I think he observed it.
'Cause,
yeah.
like,
I have
I-
observed everything.
I've known-
in
The upper
this.
known-
class go backpacking through Europe.
But I've known upper middle class people who do cruises,
Okay.
and I don't know any lower. I guess poor people who've done cruises. Not necessarily poor because that's not the point. But I know people who fit into these low class. What he calls low class labor work, and they do more of the upper class vacations.
Okay.
And I guess it's not supposed to be where like everyone fits.
Might be
neatly
your
into any of these
aspirational
boxes.
class.
Maybe. I mean,
Can I tell a story real quick?
yeah.
This is actually kind of illustrative or something. So my parents both, I don't know if either of them even have GEDs, but neither of them went to college, but they were both business owners. And then me and my two sisters all went to college. And my sister, I'm the oldest, so the middle sister. For Christmas, she got like a job teaching and had like decent money and bought my parents tickets for a cruise. And they refused the gift and made her return it.
Wow.
Because it seemed very much just that, like, no, this is like, we're not the kind of people that go on cruises.
Huh.
Oh, this is too expensive. This is too flashy. We can't accept this. Like, they felt super uncomfortable with being given a nicer gift, like, from their kid, because that like just violated the order of things.
Okay.
I also like how their refusal was based on this seems too upper class for us.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'd be so out of place. Like, it was complete status anxiety. Like, I can't accept this nice gift because it's going to, like, I know my mom would just be really upset about all the rich people or like the being surrounded by people she perceives as being higher class. It was always this like weird thing with both of my parents and especially my mom where there's this like genuine hatred of the upper classes and anything associated with them. Where even like it was weird where they'd make fun of like people with college degrees but then also like strongly encouraged me and my sisters to go to college.
Right.
It seems like they fit neatly into that upper middle class, or into that middle class group of like status anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Where like the
I'd say
upper
lower
class and the
middle
lower
class.
class don't have that, but the middle class has like a lot of anxiety about how they're being perceived by people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, like as far as I wouldn't buy a cruise just because I don't know if I'd enjoy being on a boat that long. But if someone got me a ticket for a cruise, I wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy the opportunity to like interact with different people.
I just figured I could lay by the pool and eat as many shrimp as I could just to see what it does, right?
That might not be the best idea
It's like
on a
Jake
boat.
Peralta when they go on the cruise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That went over in my head, but now that you've pointed out.
Living in the full-on slug life.
We had the best lower middle class boat. It was like a small cobia boat that my dad liked.
What's cobia?
It's like a brand of boat.
Oh.
It's a small like kind of shitty boat. I don't know, but he stuck a gigantic engine on it, so it had like a speedboat engine. It was like a total like Franken boat.
Right.
Like my dad loved tinkering with stuff, so we grew up with like Franken bikes and we had Franken cars, and then that was our Franken boat.
See, I'm confused because owning a boat seems like upper middle class to me,
It
but
depends on the
powerboating,
boat.
Like
powerboating is
yeah.
lower class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're upper class, you sailboat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no engine.
And if you're really upper class, you've got yachts or wood yachts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And the upper class just buy a bunch of yachts to crash into each other to see what sound it makes.
I have another story about that. I should stop telling stories though. I feel like I can't not tell that because just there was someone I was doing graphics design for who's this like wealthy guy from Florida who came into Atlantic City and was trying to buy one of the did buy one of the casinos. It didn't work out, but like this dude was just wild. He brought his yacht because he didn't want to stay in any of the hotels in Atlantic City, so he like brought his yacht and they're not meant to overwinter. But he didn't know or care, so it was actually like a guy who hired me for different graphics design jobs. I remember he told me this story, and it's much better because he saw it happen. It started snowing, and this guy Bill, who was like really anxious whenever it snowed because he like was scared of being snowed in, so he'd always like go out to a diner. And as he said, he went to Atlantic City. He's sitting there watching the water, I guess, and then starts to see this yacht coming towards land. This yacht unmoored itself and crashed into the like Atlantic City Harbor.
Oh shit.
Because yeah, this guy just had to have his yacht to live in.
So,
But like I'm just imagining sitting there in a diner eating some soup and you see it coming closer and closer and you're just like, it's not supposed to be there.
it's gonna crash into me. So shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the reason this is particularly interesting recently is because of the follow-up post he made, where he said that that classism is kind of a big deal, but no one is talking about it right now, and the Republicans could seize on this to actually make something of the party again, rather than the flaming pile of vomit and wreckage that it is currently.
Those weren't his exact words, but yeah.
Yes, and
Not far off.
yeah,
It's like, look, I hate you and you hate me.
yes,
But I would rather you guys develop yourself into like a coherent message that like you can actually articulate yourselves behind, just to make it so that my side has to like actually level up to compete with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys weren't a bunch of bumbling morons, it would, like, because you guys are a bunch of bumbling morons, and I'm paraphrasing his stuff, it means that my side doesn't have to shape up whatsoever, because all they have to do is not totally suck to do better. But if you guys
Like,
didn't...
what are you going to do? Vote for that guy?
Yeah. If you guys didn't suck so hard, then my side would have to shape up, and that looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he does this by pointing out that Trump did not win on a platform of capitalism or liberty or anything else. He won on a platform of being anti-establishment. And the establishment that he stood against was the upper class. People who live in nice apartments in Manhattan or San Francisco or D.C. and laugh under their breath at anyone that comes from Akron or Tampa. Is it Akron? Akron or Tampa? And yeah, that is absolutely the impression that I got, that Trump was the like president of the lower class, even though he never said anything like that. Like like everything about him screamed that. The way the media portrayed him was they are pissed off that someone this low class and crude got into the presidency, right?
Well, what's fun just to picture about like how, because then you wonder like, all right, what about class and money? Trump's no doubt lying about his exact figures, but let's assume he's got some. Like, he's the guy who would, drink a 6-pack of Coca-Cola a day and have his limousine driver take him through McDonald's drive-through, and then, presumably have explosive diarrhea on his literally gold-gilded toilet, right?
Yeah.
And so the money aspect isn't really playing a role there. Neither is all his flashy shit. Like, he's as low class as it comes.
Right.
It's not that he has the money, it's that he still feels the need to signal that he has the money.
And you can't signal louder than a golden toilet. Right. And when you're shitting out McDonald's and Coca-Cola, like it's just it emphasizes that point, right? Yeah. Or a well done steak with ketchup on it. Like the guy I only know a couple of like his eating habits. Well, I know the McDonald's one because when the basketball team came during the furlough. And, we've got the best eaters. And it's like, oh my God, I forgot how that guy talked. I love I haven't heard a fucking thing. Having that guy off Twitter has made the world a better place. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the class aspect of it isn't like how many Big Macs can I buy. It's the fact that he's eating Big Macs. Yeah, and so it's the establishment and the classism that he was winning, that he won his campaign on, his platform wasn't like against the rich. Because he had a bunch of rich friends. His cabinet was largely wealthy people.
He's technically rich, if you believe all the signaling he does.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're to liquidate his properties, he'd probably have more money than all of us put together.
Right.
So, there's all that. But it was the so the class that he's articulating against, and I might be jumping ahead here, is the elites.
Yes.
Those who think they're better than you.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Now, granted,
those who call all the other states the flyover states.
Yeah. And like
who eat Thai food and think they'd gain 200 pounds if they stepped in a McDonald's and won't even speak the name Chick-fil-A and go to Ivy League college. There's a long list.
I love being in the middle on this. Like my wife went to an Ivy League college. She doesn't brag about it, but I do. And yet we had Chick-fil-A like last weekend, right? So we're just fuck all the norms. We'll just zigzag as much as we want, right?
Yeah.
Again, I'll eat dinner late like a rich person, but I had waffles for dinner on Thursday night, right? So
I don't know if this is worth bringing up, but having met your wife, she very much gives off an upper class vibe
because she's sophisticated.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But again, she's a social worker, right? So it's not about the money part.
Right.
It's just the
culture.
Attitude. Yeah, the attitude and the culture, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly how she does it, but like you can just tell. You're like, huh, okay, that person's classy.
It's because normal plebs like us aren't that beautiful.
That must be it.
It's at least part of it.
Yeah.
Your wife is very conventionally attractive, but she also is... There's like mannerisms that clearly are just part of like class you grow up in. That, like, I would feel weird breaking it down since she's not here to like defend herself. But
and there's
very attractive lower class people too. So like,
I'm being somewhat tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
but like you said, there's certainly a mix. Like you still eat at Chick-fil-A. You guys went to the same school together, so
I think that's
if nothing else. She
class.
wasn't in a European boarding school.
Yeah, I mean she went to public school. Yeah. It was just like Colorado State University didn't accept her for a master's program, and for some reason Columbia did. So. Honestly, the real reason is probably because CSU wanted to have out-of-state people because they get to charge them 3x, right? So, anyway.
Yeah, what do we think about this modest proposal?
Well, I think that he's right about Trump ran on classism. Like, the people who love him...
But he never used the word.
No, he never used the word. But you could tell. Just, you don't need to use the word to tell. Your actions speak much louder than any words do. whatever he said was immaterial, as was proven by him many, many times. And like the people who support him, even though lots of times they're hurt by any of his policies, individual policies that you care to mention, it doesn't matter because he's from their class and he's the only person from their class that's in the political game of at least at any really important level. Everyone else, for the most part, is upper class people. Maybe there's a few upper middle that have made it in, like AOC, but there's no one in the lower class, the prole class, representing them, and he does, and that's fucking nice to see. And you're willing to vote for like one douchebag who's kind of an idiot, as long as like he's the one person representing your entire class out there. Finally sticking it to those rich, snobby assholes that think that you're a bunch of hicks with, missing teeth that aren't good for anything except working in the coal mines.
Yeah, it definitely helps resolve what was a confusion 5 years ago about the
Why Trump?
the NASCAR enjoying drive-through. Again, you just check the box down the list of what you call low class, and it's like, I thought you guys hated rich people, and yet you guys are a big fan of Donald Trump. And it's like, well, it's not about the rich part. Yeah. It's that wealth seems to correlate with upper class, but this guy's, he does all the same, the same shit I like, right?
Yeah. You were about to say degrading, weren't you?
Yeah, but I don't want to and again, I was mainly thinking of the the McDonald's diarrhea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of stuff.
Can you stop putting that mental image in my head, please?
All right, last time.
No. Oh, okay, that was it. Okay. Do either of you remember the title of, or some way, like some Google keywords for another essay that I think was Scott Alexander, where he suggested that we have two different elections, one where you vote on the policies and one where you're voting on the status stuff? Because I feel like that kind of correlates to this where...
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Okay, here it is. It's the 21st century. Having principles is out of style. Politics is motivated by tribal hatred. You tell your people that the other side hates them and wants to kill them, they need to fight back. The Democrats are great at this. Cis white men hate you. They deny your right to exist. Their cruelty is the point. Resist or be destroyed. You Republicans have been caught flat-footed. You can't openly defend cis white men. That would be transphobic, racist, sexist. And you can't openly attack trans black women. That would be super transphobic, racist, sexist. Plus, it wouldn't work. And the sort of bitterness in the, having principles is out of style, politics is motivated by tribal hatred, just really echoes that essay that I wish I could remember the name of. I'm probably going to remember it as I'm driving away.
Yeah.
That happens every time we record this podcast. I'm like, it was that thing!
Then you could always text us about it later.
People who listen to the show will know it immediately. And
That's true. Yeah.
Correct everybody. I do like that about our community.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that is, absolutely why Trump won and why the media hated him and couldn't understand how he could possibly get in. And I mean, I do think it's a problem that there's an entire class of the American populace that is just ignored by the political apparatus.
Not even ignored, but outright, shamed and mocked.
Yeah.
Or at the least pitied. At best, maybe pitied.
I feel like there's not very much pity.
Well, it's those poor, factory workers, or those people who have to work in fast food restaurants. They, must suck to be them. I feel so bad. And, I do think that there's some level of pity, right?
Probably. I've definitely run into people, I guess, now we're starting to divide Democrats, Republicans, or liberals, rather, that just cannot spare a shred of sympathy for someone who they know belongs to the group of racist, transphobic, warmongering, whatever.
Yeah.
Education hating, gun toting.
There was a really fun, 8-minute episode of Sam Harris's podcast, I think the day before the 2020 election. And it was his final, you talked about stupid epiphanies earlier or something. It was kind of his on that with Trump, where it's he's I finally get it. And it was, like I said, less than 10 minutes long. But he's just listing off and he's consider the message that you get from your friends on the left about how you suck. Every problem for minorities is your fault personally. You're not good enough because you're not woke enough. Your failure to master all the pronouns proves that you're a piece of shit. Or your failure to master them immediately proves that you're a piece of shit. It's all of this whatever not merely like kicking yourself, but like the rest of your group kicking you down for not being good enough, and everyone gets points for every kick they get in. And if you kick yourself, you get extra points. He's like, you compare, and I'm paraphrasing.
Watch me checking my privilege.
Exactly. He's like, you compare that to Donald Trump, who's like the McDonald's Jesus, right? You know, there's no comparison. You're never told you're not good enough. Like every quote fault that you have is just fully accepted, and that's okay. And it's like, I think that's partly part of the message that makes this divide, right? And that's definitely like a left-right thing, and not so much of a class thing. But the class thing correlates strongly with that, right?
Yeah. So Scott Alexander says, whenever an upper-class institution tried to make him admit that they were the experts and he should bow to them, he spat in their faces instead, which feels really gratifying after being subjected to what you were just talking about.
Yeah, it's really concerning, though, I think, because basically it was like he won on a platform of hate or disdain for dismissal of, like, wanting to overthrow, like, these elites, but as, Scott also pointed out, he was, like, spitting in the faces of pandemic experts during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't a costless signaling thing.
Yep. Well, that brings us to Scott's modest proposal.
I was going to say really quick, though, is I don't know if it was fully a platform of hate. It was just a platform of you don't suck.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what the platform, like, the things that people were, like, cheering for and voting for him for were his, like, making the other side really mad.
Yeah, there was definitely that, too. I mean,
and talking shit about them.
That's how Democrats won, too, right?
Yeah, no,
like,
I'm not saying that
bumper
this
stickers,
is,
literally anyone but Trump, right?
Well, the thing is, when you've been feeling that way for a decade or more, like...
It was a powerful message for people that felt totally disenfranchised. That
Right.
somebody could, like, make it to the highest office in the U.S. and then talk shit about, I don't know, gays in the military. And
Like, what was it? The riot is the language of the disenfranchised or whatever? Fortunately, they didn't have to riot. They just had to vote for Trump, and he would have the...
they did riot eventually.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then, his election would be basically a 4-year riot that fucks the rest of the country.
Yeah.
It was a little...
It was pretty fucked up.
Don't get me wrong,
Messed some stuff up.
there's plenty of hate there, but I'm just thinking, like, the couple of Trump voters I know, they're not particularly hateful people.
Right.
I think, and they're always just going to vote. They're going to check the red box no matter what, apparently. But I think that it's for many, it wasn't just like, oh, finally, someone else who hates black people as much as I do.
Yeah.
Go ahead and quote mine that. Like, it was, oh, good, here's a guy who's not telling me that I suck. If it's, I don't know, because the professional politicians like Biden and Bernie, they do a pretty good job of like not shitting on you personally.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, maybe AOC, but even she's more just like fueling hatred. It's not so much about like how you suck and you're not woke enough, but that's like the message you get from your friends if you hang out in left circles like I do, right? I think it was just finally somebody was like, no, actually you're good and I got your back, even though I don't represent anything that you care about personally, but I'm not going to put you down.
Right.
I'm trying to. That's like my most charitable.
There's probably
ways.
both of those things going on.
Totally.
I'm sure that there's probably two different camps also of like people that voted for Trump because he represented them in some way, and people that voted for him because they had the same enemies.
100%. Yeah, I'm merely
There's a
trying
lot
to
of
put
crossover
my
there,
most
too.
positive spin on how. Because I mean, again, this is just the thing that is important to keep in mind, that like it's not true that 40% of Americans are just savage, bigoted monsters, right? No doubt, every savage, bigoted monster voted for Trump, but not every Trump voter was that, because frankly, the country is way too well, like,
I know a lot of
our society's too strong for it to be the case that literally 4 in 10 of us are raving psychopaths.
I'm willing to bet a lot of savage, bigoted monsters voted against Trump, too.
Probably.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people that voted for Trump were...
when I think of it from the other angle, absolutely. Yeah.
Man, I think this might have been on Radiolab or something, but where they were looking at trends about who voted for Trump, and one of the confusing ones was first or like second generation immigrant business owners. And talking to them, it was clear that they, first of all, thought that Trump was going to help business, and then secondly had this like, I guess it was the like sort of class familiarity thing.
And I think the really fucked up thing is that the only person that these people could turn to was fucking Trump.
Right.
Like, there was no one else. This was what they were stuck with.
That's because we're not
that's a
voting on
failure of our
policies.
system. Yeah.
I guess that's the thing that I'm like bitter about with this. But anyway, like,
So his modest proposal is that we can actually, Republicans can pivot to actually represent these people. And instead of being, the flaming wreckage of a party they currently are, they can start focusing on that and becoming the party of the working class and put all their messaging on fighting classism. Whenever anyone talks about the white working class, you can always say the white working class. And Yeah, and focus on that instead. And that he talks, this could obviously it would appeal to the people who are factory workers and working class already. It would appeal to blacks and Hispanics because they're mostly working class and they hate the elites as much as anyone else. He was talking about a bunch of people who it could appeal to. It could appeal to Republicans who are in it for capitalism, because he'd argue that capitalism is a system that lets people succeed regardless of their class. Could be appeal to poor people who just want jobs, passing out how DC Democrats passed a law saying all childcare workers must have college degrees, and how this is just a blatant attempt to take away jobs from working class people and give them to upper class people instead. And you can even position yourself as the party of meritocracy, and because meritocracy is the opposite of class favoritism.
What I like about this whole, like, when you're reading this, I don't know about anyone else, but like I'm getting this sense of apprehension because like this is like a damn compelling message, and I don't want the enemy to be that powerful, and yet that's the point.
Yes,
and it's like if we get an articulate, powerful enemy, then the other side, our side, has to up the level of their game.
Right.
There's a lot of shit I don't like about Democrats.
Yeah.
That like I think that I'm like kind of excited about this. I don't know if it's going to. Here's a really good strategy. Have it for free. Please take it. But it's coming from a like San Francisco Jewish intellectual doctors.
Like I'm worried about it because, like you said, it's a compelling strategy and it could get them winning a lot. And I hate Republican social issues. I'm on. I think abortion is the most important right that a modern society can have. And they're rabidly against that. Plus, a lot of other things that I clash with them on. But on the other hand, maybe if they were to adopt this working class thing, they would have to modify some of their positions in order to attract.
Well, can we go down to the platform that he proposes?
Yeah, the platform is really interesting.
Yeah, I had a comment on just before platform that I wonder if platform even matters, right? Like nobody voted for Joe Biden because they liked his take on whatever issue, right?
Right. They voted on him because he wasn't Trump.
Right. And I think the people who voted for Trump they're like, oh, he's pro this or anti that. They're just like, oh, he's on our side, right? Yeah. So I think it's less about like what an individual candidate's like policy proposals are or stances. It's more just like how well are they communicating their allegiance to me.
Right. Well, that's the distinction between like signaling voting and policies voting.
Right.
I really liked Scott's other, I think it was Scott, the other proposal that we just have two separate elections. Oh, and the thing is, you get one vote, but you only get to vote in
one or the other.
Yeah, in one or the other. So you have to pick whether. Do either of you remember this?
It's vaguely ringing a bell, but
I remember thinking it would be really great because one of the things he proposed was that like, so the policy, whoever wins the policy election would get to like do the boring stuff, like worry about budgets and laws and. Then the status side would get to decide what national anthem we get to play and what the official dress of Inauguration Day was. Like everyone has to wear a uniform and like sing a song, and they get to pick which one it is. And
yeah, I can see where that I like that. I think the idea is fun, but I guess my last thought was about the what was it? What was I just saying about classism and signaling and policies? Oh, right. So that I guess that's what I was going to say was that like there are Democrat policies that I'm not like the biggest champion of, but the most important ones are like to me things like environmental sustainability, global warming, abortion is on the list. Like those, and it doesn't make me a single issue voter necessarily, but it makes me a plural issue voter. Really, like one side's pro science and education and reason, the other one's not, and like. That's a somewhat harsh distinction, but it basically comes down to that, right? Like if you're going to be a global warming denialist, you have to be an anti-science person,
right?
And that means that seeps into everything else.
Yeah,
right.
But
germs aren't real. COVID's fake, and I'm being uncharitable there, but just illustrate.
COVID's not real; it's fake, and also China made it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the left has its share of things that it exaggerates scientifically as well, or denies or whatever.
Oh my
Probably
God.
Not as
organic
many,
foods.
Yeah.
GMOs are a fun example.
Chemicals.
Vaccines are kind of the one, at least as of like 15 years ago. I'm not sure where now. Vaccines are definitely a political issue where the left is all for them. But 5 years ago, it was one of those things that kind of split evenly among the parties. You got like, the purist, non-chemical liberal people, and then the anti-science Republican people.
It causes autism.
Well, I mean, even on the climate change side, like, what's her name? Greta from Norway?
Thunberg.
Okay, yeah, the 16-year-old girl who was literally, like, she was very impassioned and everyone loved her and cheered her, but she literally thought the world was going to end in her lifetime, which I don't know how you can, in good conscience, raise a child to think that.
That's
like,
what I was taught. I started college as an environmental science major, and I dropped the major because and
no one
I
corrected
basically
her.
thought
They
that.
cheered her on.
Yeah.
At least everyone that I saw. And like no one said, look, the world won't literally end. It'll make things hard for a lot of people, and it'll especially fuck the poor countries, but the human race is gonna keep going. And I mean, sometimes you see some of the estimations on how much it's going to cost to change things, and like the left doesn't even want to talk about that. Like, here we can change some of these things and talk about how we're going to change other things, and maybe we can look at geoengineering or something. And instead, they're just like, no, cut carbon, cut carbon, cut carbon. And it doesn't matter who it immiserates and how badly the world's poor are going to be affected by this, because they're the ones that are needing to boost their carbon output in order to have better lives. And it's just this whole idea that all you should do is cut carbon no matter how much it hurts people, or the human race will go extinct, is a thing that I see pushed sometimes.
And yeah, it's definitely...
And it's wrong, and that drives people away.
It's a reduction to the absurd for sure, and it's like, because the non-bumper sticker version of it, or because the truth of the issue is too long to put on a bumper sticker,
yeah,
it becomes like, well, the simple, succinct message is what gets pushed out there. I think
especially like the sort of anti-corporate message to like big oil and the big agriculture are generating all the carbon. It's their fault. We need to performatively say that we don't agree with them while eating our fast food sandwich, like
right.
driving our car.
While eating our organic food that takes 3 times the amount of energy inputs to grow.
Right.
I think it's like, yes, the messaging and often the practice of solving it is misguided, but they're at least acknowledging a real problem that they're trying to address.
Right. You can't just ignore it. And so that's going to be fucking even worse.
Right. So that's where I'm at. It almost certainly will be. Yeah. I mean, granted, it would be possible to try and fuck it up worse than it just happens to work out.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the push to cut carbon is that way. Right.
Right. At least the left acknowledges that it exists.
Yeah. I don't know.
The right is starting to.
Yeah. They're probably not buying beachfront property in Florida. Right? Yeah. All right. I didn't mean to derail us too hard there. I guess.
No.
All I'm trying to do is prop up with that. It's possible to be on either side and not be an insane evil person.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do think ultimately it probably will be good to have a strong opposition party, because otherwise you can just do whatever and shit the bed and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've heard, I don't know, I don't remember where I heard this. It was probably on some HBO series or something, where some politician was pushing something and someone said, but this is going to negatively affect black neighborhoods. And he said, what are they going to do? Vote for the Republicans?
Where was this?
I don't remember. I think it could have been The Wire or something.
Oh, okay. So not real.
Well, that's
No,
the kind
probably
of
not
thing that
real.
this would prevent.
Exactly. Because if people have an alternative option, then you actually have to take care to address your constituents' issues.
Or if somebody is pointing at things that you're doing badly, then you have to do better.
Yeah.
I could even see, I mean, like, I might vote for a Republican if they, like, advocated some of the things on this platform. Like,
yeah. So this is an interesting platform, and I
think
have
that,
comments about it afterwards,
yeah.
but shall we go into some of it?
I don't know, if both sides could have, like, stuff that I agree with, and there's one politician who's, like, they're running on the platform of, I'm going to do this thing, even if they brought a bunch of other Republican shit that I don't like in.
I just think it'd be fun if it was hard to pick between two candidates. Imagine sitting there actually thinking, like, I gotta do some more homework.
Yeah, you'd have to weigh the pros and cons of this policy package versus this one, and I could see some cases where it might outweigh, where the benefits might outweigh the non-benefits. God damn it. Let's talk about the platform.
But I think to almost every one of every listener and every American, you're pretty sure you know which side you're going to vote for, because you basically know what you're getting, or you've accepted that package, right? If it was a hard choice, I think that's what makes this modest proposal so interesting, is like, I could see myself deliberating if one side was articulately arguing the platform we're about to get into, right?
Yeah, people would actually, it would make people more, like, politically active if it was like, oh, both sides have good points, now I actually have to think about it.
Yeah.
Most people don't even, like, I don't know, they don't even research their candidates or what their platforms are. They kind of just, like, go to the poll and be like, blue, 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 blue.
So, first point in the general rebrand yourself as against classism is declare a war on college. Because college is basically there to serve the upper class. Make it illegal to require bullshit degrees for any sort of promotion, which happens a lot of places where they don't even care what degree you have. You just have to have some kind of college degree.
Or how long you've been doing the job.
Yeah.
Did you read this bullet point here that said, just use the words class and classism. Say, hey, we Republicans want to be the party of the working class. We're concerned about the rising power of the upper class, and we are dedicated to stamping out classism.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said that yet or not.
I don't think I said it.
But that's the like the setup for this,
The
right?
rebrand.
Yes. And this is how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
How to stamp out classism, which is as bad as racism, if not worse. And anyone who isn't a Republican is, trying to oppress your class or something. Yeah.
It lets you have that same actual like superiority look down your nose that the right has, or the left has towards the right now. Yeah.
That I'm a racist? Yeah? Not really. You're a classist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those would be fun bickering wars to watch on Reddit, right?
Right. Yeah. Because...
sorry, you're still talking?
Oh, no. Well, no, I was just going to talk more about the war on college and why.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention, that specifically says ban degree discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you can't make it illegal, just make all government offices and companies that do business with the government ban degree discrimination.
Mm-hmm. Can't require someone have a degree if they've shown that they can do the work. Which, God, I don't even remember who this was that I was talking to. But there was someone I was talking to not too long ago who had Jace, it was you, in fact. Wasn't it?
I don't know. You haven't said what the thing is.
It was a library position, and when you wanted to get hired on, the guy, your boss, said, you already do everything, probably better than someone we brought in new would do it, but you don't have a degree, so we can't hire you.
I would need a library master's to be a librarian, like with a capital L.
Even though you were already doing all the work.
And, well, actually, my boss was like, well, if you want to get a promotion, you could, like, I don't know, I was considering it, and she's like, it would be really easy for you because you already know everything in the degree.
Yeah.
So you could just breeze right through it. And I was like,
so I just
but I'd be out $20,000.
Yeah. I just have to bribe someone $20,000 to continue doing what I'm already doing.
And do a lot of, like, writing essays about, and, I don't know, like, working on stuff that I already know, which, like...
Waste your life.
Not to mention staying in that same job without prospect of promotion for, like, the 2 years it takes to get a master's degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think... you could do like an advanced standing program that get you through in a year, but it's like, so what? You're basically telling me just hang out, keep getting paid unpaid at this job title, just so I can get the piece of paper that says you're allowed to give me a better job?
Yeah.
See, this is compelling.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Trade schools are often frowned upon for whatever reason, even though they teach you how to do the fucking job. As
I went to a trade school instead.
Yeah, like 2/3 of us are in boot camps right now, right? Or have been through boot camps anyway. Yeah.
Yeah,
because you finished one, you're in one right now, and yet there's still places that are like, oh, a programming boot camp, I need to see a degree.
Yeah, I think those places are fewer and fewer, but they do exist.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Clinical research was interesting though, because they did I did that boot camp for clinical research, and none of the companies who hire researchers are familiar with it. My resume and like interviews had to include a lot of explaining what the course is and like showing that they are actually accredited and that I do actually like know all the like federal codes and stuff.
But you were able to demonstrate that.
I knew them at one point.
That was a struggle getting like coding boot camps off the ground too.
Yeah.
But it's easier to walk in and demonstrate that you can, talk the talk and walk the walk in an interview than maybe for clinical research. You might know. I'm not sure how you demonstrate your knowledge in that industry, like in an hour.
No,
right?
you can. There was like tests where you had to memorize like 500 acronyms and I had to be able to like explain the Declaration of Helsinki and.
But you didn't have to, I don't know, give an explanation of how old was I forget the guy who discovered penicillin. Well, whoever it was, the idea that you didn't have to recite the pointless trivia you would have learned in school.
Yeah,
right?
No, it was like stuff that you need to know in order to do the job.
Exactly.
I do remember Scott Alexander specifically complaining that he needed any kind of undergraduate degree before he could go in for a medical degree, and so he got one in philosophy. And the medical teacher, when they saw that, were like, "Oh, good, we're gonna have someone to class this place up." It's like, I spent 4 years and $60,000 so I could class a place up before I learned how to actually be a doctor. Motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's fun.
See, this seems to indicate that class aspect that I was talking about, though, where
He literally used the word class.
oh yeah, well that too, that's perfect. But I was thinking like if you know pointless trivia, it shows that you have time to learn pointless trivia, right? So if I can tell you how old Charles Darwin was when he whatever had his first kid or something, does that make me a better biologist? No. But if you want to be an evolutionary biologist and you go through the school program, I don't know if you'll learn that particular piece of random trivia, but my point's illustrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think being as this community is already kind of down on college as a wasteful signaling game that steals years of people's lives for not much benefit, I think we're kind of already on this boat.
That's part of what made this so like this delightfully dangerous idea here of the proposal. It's like, oh yeah, check. I'm already on board with that. Oh shit, check there. I check all of these boxes, man. What are you doing? Yeah.
So the second box is the war on experts. Which, first of all, I'm not sure I like the sound of that because I kind of like the experts when they tell me that, things about coronavirus. But then I remember that the experts also told me that masks don't work because I guess they wanted to preserve the masks for the emergency workers and decided lying to the public is the best way to do that.
And for the first 3 months after vaccines came out, they're like, nope, keep social distancing, keep quarantining, keep wearing masks. No, you still can't see your family. Like, basically, the vaccine doesn't do anything.
Right.
That was the message for the first 3 or 4 months, right? And it's just like, in fact, I think it was in the last couple of weeks where it was like, nope, you don't have to quarantine if you travel anymore if you're vaccinated. And it's like, thank you, I fucking knew that.
Yeah.
But, why do I need your... So it's annoying, and that's part of what makes this fun, is like, these are the same noises that people on the wrong side of arguments make, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I already know better than you on this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, most of the time you don't. For any given expert on anything that they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like this generic anti-expert rhetoric is
it's terrible for the most part,
right? But there are so many times where you can say,
what about this situation where the expert literally fucked the public for their own gain? And you're like, well, damn.
Or even like just taking COVID again, like if you mention that it's the average survival rate for people in our demographics is like 99.995% or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sounds like a anti-corona believer person would say, right?
Right.
Like I'll almost certainly not die if I get COVID, and that's just that's a fact. I'm a basically healthy 30-something-year-old, right? So like my odds are pretty good. But to acknowledge that out loud makes it sound like I'm shouting from the Red Tribe, right? And like I just looked this up yesterday. I think Colorado had 6,128 deaths recorded for COVID. And so, granted, how many of those were, Cuomo'd away into like not actually COVID, but were COVID deaths?
Right. Yeah.
You could, let's say, if you double it, right? Mm-hmm. There were still 500,000 cases, ballpark, in Colorado. So we got something like 10,000 deaths for 500,000 cases. So the survival rate was pretty good. Granted, way scarier than a flu, but like.
And also part of the good survival rate was the fact that we didn't overwhelm the hospitals.
Right. Colorado did a good job.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing is Colorado had 6,100 something deaths. The United States had 500,000, right? So we just our state happened to do a pretty good job, and that's however the numbers came to be 6,128 exactly. Again, double, triple it. It's still pretty good. It's not a drop in the water really for the 500,000 dead, right?
So the solution that he proposes is prediction markets.
Yes, this is the thing where like I wasn't on board with this until he said the solution is prediction markets.
And then you're like oh, what's that? Prediction markets? Ooh, that's
one
of my
the
words.
Thing that our group has been pushing for the last decade. So yes, about the prediction markets.
Yeah, repeal all bans on them, give tax breaks for participating in them. Then you'll get a decentralized, populist, credential-free, market-based alternative to expertise.
Yeah.
When the prediction markets outperform 75% of experts, fire them and say this proves you were right all along, that government-sponsored entities were just a jobs program for the upper class. The remaining 25% of experts are cool, and you'll definitely listen to them very closely about whatever they have to say. Yeah. So, kind of acknowledging that this one's a bit of a stretch, but you could sell it.
I don't think it would be bought, but I mean, I think it's a damn good idea, and if you're dealing with a Republican Party, which for the past 5 years has been saying experts are awful and telling everybody that, you can't trust experts. And this is part of their branding now. They can't just drop it. This is Scott's way of like saving that. Like you don't have to lose face and turn around on this. You can continue to say you can't trust experts and still be that party. But look, we can fucking do prediction markets. It kind of feels to me like Scott saw a way to hijack the Republican Party into supporting something we all actually want and think would make the world much better. And I admired that of him.
he's that's one of the things that makes him a genius. He's a very like creative thinker, able to like articulate these. This is an original idea, right?
I wish he was in politics, but I wouldn't want to like impose politics on him. Subject him to
Wouldn't wish that on my
politics.
worst enemy. But
He saw that Republicans have this problem that they are now anti-expert, and he has a solution which happens to really, dovetail very well with his own goals.
And part of the solution is like you guys can be the experts. We'll deregulate prediction markets and we'll tax incentivize them. So you guys now are incentivized to learn what you can and make money on this. And so yes, we still have experts, but it's you, the public, right? The working class. You guys can be the experts on this when you make the right predictions. Like it's a very like empowering message. And the idea, what is it? Predict.io or whatever, or predict.it. It's like a $500 maximum that you're allowed to put in the prediction market.
Right, yeah.
If it was $500 million that you're allowed to put in there, people could be making some serious fucking money on this. Right. And
even if you're only, over an average year making 1%, like 1% of 500, you starve to death. 1% on 500,000 won't be a comfortable living, but you can do something.
Pretty good living, yeah.
Yeah, it's 5,000 a year. That's not a lot.
Well,
I thought it was 50,000. Oh yeah.
I think it's more the sort of branding than like it's not necessarily that everybody who's going to vote for this wants to be the expert themselves, but like the fact that I think Republicans, whether they're super rich or super poor, do just like all tend to be pro money though, or pro capitalism. So the association with money and the like idea that the common folk could
contribute.
Yeah, or rather that like the experts aren't these people who are coming from these like Ivy League colleges and like he says sneaking in democratic ideas or pro democrat bias into their judgments.
Yeah.
I don't know if a real Republican would actually like buy this though.
I doubt they would, but it's a elegant solution to this we hate experts problem.
Well, it points out there's no other solution too, where it's sort of like, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
So like maybe this doesn't exactly dovetail with the Republican ethos, but it's at least something that they could like pretend to support.
Yeah, the alternative is like there's two. There's what they're doing now, which is say expertise is a myth and those guys don't know what they're talking about, or it's flip-flop and say, you know what, never mind, let's start touching the experts. This way it's like, no, you guys get to keep the experts in check. And just the fact that it's it empowers the populace in a way, I think that's the attractive part of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of empowering the populace, and you guys are the experts, number 3 is the war on upper class media.
Why am I the expert on that?
Well, I'm not saying you are the expert. You were saying that you guys, as in the general populace, are the experts.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, you can take over for the upper class who are trying to lead you around by the nose. He points out that 67% of U.S. families watch the Super Bowl. What percent of New York Times editors and reporters do? How come 96% of political donations from journalists go to Democrats? Insist there is no reason any of this could be true except systemic classism, and any other explanation is offensive, and it's upper class media's moral duty to do something about this immediately, which I think is fucking beautiful, because it's basically a mirror of the thing where, they say, why is it that 14% of the population is black, but only 4% of CEOs are black, This could only be due to systemic racism, and you must do everything you can to fix this right now, which I'm not saying that's a wrong argument or anything, but the fact that he can just completely flip it around like that and say, like, well, 90% of political donations from media go to the Democrats, that could only be due to systemic classism, which is just as bad as systemic racism, and you got to fix that now.
They're paying the government to reinforce their narrative for their ends. You guys need to stop them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that one's less clear what it would look like. Does it just mean, like, buy a subscription to Breitbart's Substack page?
It's basically things like, read blogs, go on Substack, watch YouTube, don't watch the mainstream media channels anymore.
But there already is, like, Fox News.
There is Fox News, that's the problem.
This one, I read this in February when it came out. I didn't get a chance to rereading the last part here. Does he expand on this point that much?
Anti-censorship is a big part of it.
Okay, yeah. I guess I can see that too.
Insist that working class people have the right to communicate with each other without interference from upper class gatekeepers.
It's a really nice way of saying you should be allowed to say the N-word on TV.
Oh, shit.
I mean, let's put it in a more defensible position, because this ties into bullet point 4 about wokeness, but it's like, this says that you should be allowed to read Huck Finn in college, right? You should be allowed to read it out loud. In front of a class, if you're if you're pulling out an important passage, and you shouldn't lose your job for reading Huck Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird or these other important books, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, I do like you said, you pulled out that bit where it's like, yep, let's just flip this whole thing on its head. So
I'm not sure how I feel about that one in general, because, again, I'm not sure about the splintering of the media, but, I mean, then he points to Substack and, podcasts and blogs, and I'm like, I'm down with all those things and participate in some of them.
But I feel like everybody already does that, right? Anyone who wants to listen to podcasts can.
I
There
guess,
are
yeah, I
right-wing
don't know how
podcasts,
you,
there is right-wing news.
Yeah,
like,
but
this isn't actually solving that problem.
It sounds like he's trying to get anti-censorship.
yes,
Yeah.
There would be like a thing where you cannot be kicked off Patreon if Patreon has issues with what you were saying, which I know has happened to a few well-known people. I don't remember who at this point, but there was one really famous case that caused Sam Harris to leave Patreon because he was like, well, I guess if I say the wrong thing, I'll get kicked off too, so let me take care of that right now.
It might have been Jordan Peterson.
Maybe it was
or
Jordan
maybe it was Milo Yiannopoulos or one of those professional trolls. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's funny because that's my inner like statist, I guess. I like the idea that if I get on Patreon and I've got a podcast and I'm whatever, not merely throwing around the N-word, but like advocating for violence against these communities or something. It's like, yeah, you know what? Patreon's totally justified in kicking me off their platform. It's their house, That again, that's me and that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And I realize that there are problems with like, I think you gave it to me in the most like articulate way, or in the most succinct way that drove the point home. It's like, imagine if the other side controlled the platforms instead of our side.
Right.
That would actually
We'd be illegal.
Well, so then it's like, oh yeah, if it was Fox News in charge of everything and not the New York Times, just to make it super simple, like that, then what, all my opinions on Patreon have to subscribe to Fox News narrative? No, we should just protect every narrative. All right, fine. Like I get where that's coming from, and yet I still find I need to settle this,
Internally.
like, internally, not word vomiting through the whole thing, but it is an interesting way to drive that point home. It's like, Stephen, I'm saying this to myself, you're probably only okay with this because your side controls the right side of the narrative, right?
Right.
Like if it happens to be that the dark side controlled the internet, then you might feel a little differently, and I probably would.
If it was Joe McCarthy and this was the 1950s, you would be like, I shouldn't get kicked off of the only way I can make a living.
Yeah.
Because you think that I'm a communist because I said certain things about how workers should have rights.
Yeah.
Or like me being trans means that I would be censored just like for that fact.
Because you're an unwholesome influence on our poor young Christian children.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Some bullshit like that.
That's why I
Oh
would
my
say
God.
we'd be illegal. I mean, we're like atheist, free thought, like science, pro science podcast. We'd probably be censored.
Yeah, I could think of all kinds of nonsense reasons that if the wrong side was in charge, they could find reasons to, kick all of us off. And you're right. You're in Jason. You're indicating, but audience can't see, is in a uniquely tough position there because you're basically at that cusp, right? In the trans community, I mean, right? Like if things were just a little worse, you wouldn't be allowed to podcast whatsoever, right? Things would have to get substantially worse before atheists weren't allowed to podcast.
Yeah.
But if Trump had 10 years in office instead of 4, there's a good chance that we wouldn't be allowed to hear your voice on the radio, which is
trans
funny
people
and
are,
horrifying.
like the favorite minority, or the I don't even know what to call it. Like the minority that people are the most like angry about on both sides. Where like I'm actually curious who's gonna come after. Like once trans people are considered like like gay men are pretty much like nobody cares anymore except for some like extreme sort of fundamentalists about whether or not they should have equal rights and public acknowledgement and whatever. It's like, who's gonna be next? I feel like some people on the right would probably say that they're already next. I feel like it's like they're kind of happening at the same time though.
Conservatives, we have it so much worse than the trans people. I mean, some people can think that thought without laughing.
I've met so many Christians that think that Christians are a persecuted minority that
I know,
deserve
right?
protection.
Well, it's literally part of their religion.
Yeah.
It's like, that you're on the right side of history when you're being persecuted by the government in charge because it was Rome at the time. And it just happens that 2,000 years later they control all the government and everything, but it's still part of the religion. You're being persecuted. If you aren't being persecuted, you aren't a true Christian. So very important to keep that complex.
Yeah, they're still trying to earn their gold medals in the Oppression Olympics.
It isn't. Yeah. Dude, now that you put it that way, they started the Oppression Olympics way back then. Oh my God. Is that where the current Oppression Olympics are going to take us?
To Rome?
Well, no, 20 years from now, they'll be, in charge of the government and everything, or 200 years from now, but still be like, oh, we're so oppressed.
Probably.
Could be. I don't know. I guess depends on whether they get the emperor to convert or not.
Yeah. We'll have to see.
I actually worry as a sort of secularism gains more power, whether that is going to. I mean, I think we already see it a little bit inflame. Those messages of we're being oppressed are like people can use them right now to just like win the gold medal for the oppression Olympics, but no one really takes it seriously. But
no one takes which part seriously?
That they're oppressed. Like it's not. I don't know. I feel like if we got like an atheist president or just the demographics started shifting, it would cause people to like fight more, be more like anxious about.
I mean, I think Trump was basically an atheist president,
but people got to pretend that he wasn't. If someone was like, yeah, no, I don't believe in God, I don't go to church, and they became president, then yeah, I think that would definitely galvanize the oh my God, we're in danger. Not merely from being eaten by these atheists, but our immortal souls and those of our children. I think it would totally galvanize all that nonsense.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like inevitable, but still something I worry about. But anyway, the fourth thing on this platform was the war on wokeness.
I didn't even have to read any further. I was like, yep, I'm on board. But what does he say about the war on wokeness?
Trying to find like a sentence or two that captures. Well, it's hard to. Yeah, the first paragraph is a bit confusing. I'm not sure what this translates to as like, and therefore we will do X. But it says, okay, so first of all, it says that wokeness is a made-up mystery religion that college-educated people invented to feel superior to you. And
this is a great way to pitch the narrative to somebody, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they so sure that some of my best friends are black doesn't make you any less racist? Because the whole point is the only way to not be racist is to master an inscrutable and constantly changing collection of fashionable shibboleths and opinions which are secretly class norms.
Which I believe is true on the face of it.
Yep, there's definitely the wokeness is a form of signaling
I mean,
superiority.
there's a reason the vocabulary has to keep changing every few months because other people catch on, and then they got to change.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. And then just the more terms you can invent, the more it shows that you're thinking about it conscientiously. The more the more lines you can draw between people.
Yeah. Like if you don't have the time, as a rich person who doesn't have to do anything else with their time, if you don't have the time to constantly keep up with what the correct words of the week are and how the opinion on the ground is changing, then that is proof that you are not woke. It is sort of a class thing because what person that's working for a living and has to care about their kids and their yard and their mortgage and everything has time to keep up with how all this shit is changing every few weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just thinking about this recently. If it wasn't for the mind killers, I would have not heard of the J.K. Rowling thing, right? Now does that mean that I don't care about trans oppression issues? I
am trans, and my first response to hearing about the J.K. Rowling thing was, "Who fucking cares? Oh my god!"
Right?
Who gives a shit what she says?
Well, you're one of the brainwashed rationalist ones. You're not one of the fully woke ones, right?
Yeah.
I say that lovingly, brainwashed into the right way of thinking. Yeah, but there are people. I mean, I've had conversations with people. It's yeah, sure, that person's trans, but they're still against trans people because they're associating with rationalists, right?
Yeah.
There's this mentality that somehow the rationalist community is anti-trans, despite having
really overrepresenting trans people in the community.
Right.
Well, they're all just they're drinking the Kool-Aid, or they're those poor subjugated. It's like
it's the
there's
thing.
Actual trans people that are anti-trans, according to the woke people.
Yeah, there's gay people that are anti-gay. I mean,
yeah.
But the thing that this is actually punching against is a thing that I feel like I should be able to articulate more quickly. But have you caught on to the thing where woke people tend to, it tends to be white people saying you can't say that about black people?
Oh yeah.
Or straight people saying you can't say that about gay. It's actually the people who do have the sort of the funny the most privileged people that I think there's a element of guilt there as well as the sort of trying to signal superiority, but they just it's a lot of white cis people fighting amongst themselves about what the correct thing to do is. I just keep being reminded of this Japanese woman who sells kimono to tourists.
Yes.
Who heard about cultural appropriation, people on Twitter or whatever, telling people you can't buy kimonos if you go to Japan, and it's cultural appropriation. And this woman had no frame of reference for this.
I feel like you're reading your mind because that's exactly the one I was going to bring up in relation to this.
But so she's just I think that there's these woke people on Twitter. I don't know what woke means. I guess they're racist or something. Why wouldn't you want to buy my kimono? I make them for tourists to wear, and when I see people representing my culture and being interested in it, that makes me happy.
I never had a black person tell me that the movie Black Panther wasn't for white people. I've only had white people tell me that.
I've never known a black person who used the word African American to describe themselves.
Maybe Barack Obama, but like he's a politician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he had to do the woke speak in order to like be taken seriously by his own side while also belonging to like I don't know. It's really funny.
But like my thing was, I remember the first time someone told me that, like that. Oh no, I don't think Black Panther is for white people. And I'm like, even if every black person in the country saw it, it wouldn't have made as much money as it did. Mm-hmm. Like, are you saying that they don't want this movie to be successful? Because like I think they did, and I mean, it's just on the face of it, that sounds insane. And so you're gonna tell your white friends don't spend money to see this movie? That's insane. Who are you helping? Nobody.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the upper class is white people because it's old money. It's mostly inherited. It's just the demographics of the era. They're still mostly white, and that is why the vast majority of the woke people are white people getting upset on behalf of minorities. Because it's
actually
an upper class
racist.
Phenomenon. Yeah,
like in a lot of cases, I remember me and some of my white friends, a few of them were black too, but we were like doing a Day of the Dead party just because like we tried to, I don't know, there's any excuse to have like a party themed around a holiday, especially if it involved dressing up, because this was also my like anime nerd group. So like we were all doing like Sugar Skull makeup, and the next year when Cinco de Mayo came around, the same, like, or not Cinco de Mayo, god damn it, the Day of the Dead. Yeah. But it was like the same group of people were like, oh, we definitely can't do that because it's cultural appropriation. Like, last year it was we're like painting on skull makeup and having fun and like making traditional drinks, and like the next year suddenly it wasn't okay, and it was like there was this double speak going on where it was like that's cultural appropriation. We don't do that, and we never did that. Okay. Like, who dares? Like I don't know. It was a party where people are talking shit about the kind of people that do the same thing we had done last year.
Okay. I find it interesting that lots of times you have to, before you can appreciate a certain piece of art, you have to figure out what the race or gender of the artist is. Because you're
not allowed to like things made by racists.
Well, not just that. Like if I don't know, if like Raya and the Last Dragon was done by a primarily white crew, it would have been not okay to watch it.
I didn't see it. I think I saw the pitch meeting for it.
I have not seen it, but that is what I have read about.
It's like the one thing on Disney Plus that you have to pay extra to watch right now.
Huh. Yeah, I like the kimono example too, because it's like the person selling this is like, yeah, I would love tourists to come give me their money and enhance my business, right? Mm-hmm. And what this 15-year-old girl on Twitter in America is going to say, no, that they're taking advantage of you. You don't get it, but I do, right? Yeah. It's so condescending.
Yeah, and then like it's the same thing with like I've asked about like a bunch of Mexican people that I was friends with or that I just knew, like what do you think about like, white people celebrating like Day of the Dead or Cinco de Mayo, and they're just like, I think it's great. Like it's cool that I can go to the supermarket and like find, stuff for this holiday, like that we're getting more recognition as a culture. Mm-hmm. And I see like the white people being like, well, they're just wearing it as a costume. They're just using it as an excuse to drink and like, and I don't know.
Every holiday is an excuse to drink.
And I was kind of like, yeah, that's what the like people who celebrate this holiday do too.
Yeah, it's like St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Even if you're a devoutly Catholic Irish person, it's still just like this is a party holiday, right? Maybe if you're not that devoutly Catholic, but you know what I mean. If you're the kind of Catholic who goes to church twice a year on Christmas and Easter.
No, even devout Catholic. I think the only holiday that isn't a drinking holiday is Easter.
Unless you're drinking the blood of Christ. Yeah. Yeah. You can't get wasted on the blood of Christ. That's a sin. But getting a buzz on Christ is totally okay.
All right.
Buzzed on Christ.
So
that'd be a great wine label.
That would. You'd probably get enough controversy that people would hear about it and then buy it.
I bet I can, if I were to go through trouble, I can get it sold on the Satanic Temple's website.
Kickstart it. Get some crowdfunding. All right.
If anyone does that, I want 5%.
So that's Wakeness.
Yeah, so...
And that was the last one.
That was it, yeah. So overall, I think he has a very strong point, and maybe I think this because I've been reading him for years, and this is something he's been kind of building towards for years, but I think that classism is a very big deal, and I kind of get the feeling more because my parents came from Europe, and over there it is just acknowledged as a thing that the different classes are in a struggle, and maybe this is like due to the old influences of Marxism, but like it's weird how no one in America talks about classism at all, and it's boiling over.
It's a specific thing though, where like in India you can talk about castes because they literally had like a governmental caste system.
Yeah.
But our whole like identity as Americans originally was that we're going to be a democracy and everybody will be equal. And we really don't want to acknowledge that we failed miserably. I don't know, like.
Yeah, but it was a lie even from the very beginning. You could only vote in the
think-
original democracy if you were a
Yeah.
rich white landowner.
There
male.
was like aspirational ideas of this is the kind of like, you know, we want to be the country of freedom.
Okay.
And I think we still are very attached to the idea that we're the country of freedom, and acknowledging that we have class, that we have like a, you know, unofficial class system makes
Yeah.
people uncomfortable.
Well, and like you definitely get, I think, younger people talking about it, especially online, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, anyone who says eat the rich is talking about class, right?
Yeah.
I think that this is probably like an unpopular thing amongst like voting adults because they either were alive or they knew people who were around during the anti-communist campaign of the whatever 50s through 80s, and so like that was such a part of the culture for an entire generation that like, oh no, we're not part of that class stuff. America's transcended that. That's like, you know, I'm assuming this is part of like the implicit message, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've transcended all that stuff. Everyone can be anything. You know, if you work hard, you can be the next Elon Musk, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Elon Musk worked hard and became Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you could do it too. So like, I think people conflate classism with that sort of like, in the sense that Alexander's putting it, they're conflating the kind of like Marxism class warfare compared to like what Scott's proposing here. It just happens to be the same word.
I think class is sort of a scary thing to consider and like admit exists on both sides, where it would mean that like people on the right who consider themselves like, I don't know, or like, I think there's the whole idea of the elites, and like left-leaning behavior is signaling elitism, although they wouldn't call it that, but the Republicans certainly would. Acknowledging that they're actually like upper class and performing upper class behaviors would make them feel bad because of the whole like, oh no, privilege like they'd have to actually admit that this is like that the media is run by the left and there is because of class. And on the left I think that there's, or on the right, it's probably going to be scary to acknowledge that, or like
That they're mainly representing the working class.
yeah, well, there would definitely be an aversion towards admitting that there are classes in America and I'm in the lowest one.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, like, in order to, I think that would be actually the biggest, like, barrier to this proposal, which means that in order to talk about class, they'd have to admit that they're not the best one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Because in Europe, people really didn't give much of a fuck that they were in the lowest class. They're like,
Because they knew they were.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
explicit.
I like to drink, I'm a peasant, and someday I will kill the king.
But you
Because
hear-
fuck the upper class.
But you hear people on the left, like, supporting Marxist ideas, and, like, people on the right are the people that are mainly the ones saying, this is America, America is great, it's, like, you could be anything you want to be when you grow up, we're the country of, we love freedom and liberty, like...
Well, that's also the, you know, the
Admitting that we have
anti-classism
class,
message
yeah.
that Scott was saying, you know, like, you can say anyone can be anything. So the not acknowledging that there's class puts in hidden barriers, because saying anyone can be anything means that anyone can move out of their class into a different class. It feels like a lot like someone denying that there's any race. You couldn't address issues of racism. You couldn't talk about like how there's some people who hate people of a different race, and that's a bad thing, if you couldn't talk about race at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same thing with classism. Like, you can't talk about classism and how you should be accepting of all classes, regardless of where you are and where they are, because classism is bad. And if you can't talk about classes at all, then that's a problem.
Well, I think also there's, like, the you can be anything you want to be ethos is generally supported by, like, the old money people, or, like, you know, like,
I think they're the ones who believe it least, though. I think the
Well,
old money are
it's
the
a
ones that are like,
justification for
the
being
lower
able to say
classes
that
will always be crude.
the poor people are poor because they just didn't work hard enough. And I have all this money because I worked hard for it.
I don't think they have any delusions that they worked hard for this money. I think they deserve it because they are of the upper class, and the lowers
Yeah.
will always waste their money and squander it. And
It's probably a distinction between the old and new rich. But, like, so, like, rich Republicans definitely would want, like, I think a lot of times, like, outright say things like, you know, they're anti-welfare because they think poor people just are too lazy to go get a job. and that like women make less money than men because they don't really want to make as much money as men, or like men do work harder and earn the money, or like I don't know.
I
Like
like
they want there to be like sort of a, if class existed, then they'd have to admit that actually there are these barriers, like, and you didn't like work for your money, or like you did, but like this person is just as deserving as this money as you. Sorry, what were you gonna say, Steven?
I was going to say that I liked the way that you put it, that in order to sell this message, you'd have to say, y'all are the lowest class.
Or like we are,
Right,
I
exactly.
am.
And
You'd have to come out and say
and
that.
I'm there with you, yeah. But
You
in order
couldn't use
to
the
sell
word
the message,
lowest. You would have to say we're the working class,
That's-
and that's
yeah.
the best class.
that's what I was going to say. Is I think Scott addressed that, but he maybe could have spent a paragraph on it rather than a sentence. He worked on rebranding low class to working class,
Yeah.
and you guys should be proud of it. You guys are the backbone of America. You guys build the roads. You guys build all of our stuff.
The Joe six packs or whatever.
Yeah, sure. But plumbing is seen as low status unless like
Or
you're
Joe
really...
the plumber.
Huh?
Sorry, I'm just trying to remember.
It's low status until you're drowning in your own shit
Yeah.
because the pipes aren't working.
What the hell was was Joe the plumber the thing that like the Republican platform was running on for a while?
Oh, that was a thing. When was that? That was when Obama was running.
Yeah, wasn't it Sarah Palin that coined it?
I don't remember. I was just gonna say that like it, the important infrastructure jobs are all seen as like low class, but if you rebrand it, I think more or less correctly as like working class / essential for the continuation of society. Like I mean, no, if you're a construction worker, right? That's a lowbrow working job, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, but you guys like having places to live and roads to get there, right?
There's a term for that, and I'm trying to think of it. Like someone who provides essentials, like, or I guess you could say essential workers. That might be an interesting way to kind of co-opt that phrase from COVID, because we basically think essential workers are like what we thought firefighters were during 9/11, like amazing angels / heroes, putting their lives on the line.
Ooh, they could call them the essential class.
Yeah.
I think working class probably sounds better, though. Maybe.
There's something in
think
between
to the
there.
pe-
I think
yeah,
the
yeah.
connotation could be even better than working class, because that still already has kind of a lowbrow connotation.
But during your speeches, you could say the working class, the essentials.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the real
yeah.
American heroes, the ones putting their lives out on, putting
Yeah.
out fires and
I'm definitely
performing services.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of not shitting on people for having vocations that are seen as low status, right? Especially because, like I said, so many of them are essential for society to function. It's kind of surprising how things shook out that way. Maybe I need to just up my history level, or my skills in history, but I don't know. I guess I'm just now mulling over the idea that, like, why is somebody who builds houses seen as low status? Like, because if you're rich, you have people build houses for you. But like,
Yeah.
I guess, but it's still like,
I think knowledge work is higher status than labor work, but I think it's because it requires a degree. Anything that requires a degree or a master's or like a doctorate is more complicated than learning to build a house.
Sure. Or you could even just take the degrees out
so
of
you
it
could
and say
say.
that like some things are just harder than others at like not the physical stuff, but like the cognitive stuff.
Well, and
Right.
doing physical labor just wears your body out faster.
Right.
You're in pain for more of your life. You die younger. I can see why it would be viewed as more high status to not have that.
Yeah, peasants build stuff and they get hurt and die young, where the nobles have their stuff built for them by peasants.
And eat caviar.
Right.
I think it's just that it happened that knowledge work was the most profitable in the last few generations, because so many things are run by computers now. So much money goes into tech, and
Yeah, knowledge
it's
work
just
skills.
It just grabbed the fact that like intellectual work has the most money means it has the most power. So it's like sorry, I'm being like
No,
inarticulate today, but it's like there's a thing I want to encapsulate where it's sort of tied to the whole like idea of upper class people having their like a whole bunch of degrees, whereas if you join the military, you don't need a degree. You just need to be able to make it through boot camp. And there's like this kind of I also dislike that though, where it's like building a house is actually very complicated, and like but there aren't house building degrees. There's architecture degrees, but it's not like if you were like to become my dad's apprentice, you'd go get a degree. He'd give you a ruler and a hammer, be like, follow me up on this roof.
I think building a whole house is probably really complicated, but the person who, like the project planner for a house, probably needs to be the quote intellectual party member of that. But like the drywall person, the flooring person, those are all things you can pick up pretty quick, maybe for many people, right? So it's like
For some things.
yeah, but not certainly not things like
I mean, like, what about coal mining?
Not the plumbing and electricity part. Yeah, that's
Okay, there's jobs that are physically hard.
yeah.
Maybe that's also sort of the shift away from like like valuing jobs that could only be done by certain people.
Or certain badasses who are willing to risk getting electrocuted. Like again, electrical engineering pays a bunch because it's kind of dangerous and really complicated.
Yeah.
Like I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, like I fixed my bathroom light or something. But the most level of comfort my highest level of comfort is turning off the circuit breaker for that entire part of the house and basically poking it with a screwdriver, right? Like that's as far as I can get. If it involved me having to pull wires whatsoever on the wall, I'd be paying somebody a nice chunk of change to do it because I'm not going to die poking at my own house.
Right.
Yeah.
What about like IT? Like I'm trying to find examples that aren't, and I'm realizing that like a lot of things that we consider low class are physically dangerous.
Well, IT is
But like
in my
that's like
opinion, it's
weirdly
kind of
in the
low
middle,
class.
right?
Yeah, it's like the high level of low class
Yeah.
because they're still basically wage workers. They're doing what other people tell them, and
It's not like that the most technical
like
job to learn.
a lot of engineers are more of the working class level than
Yeah.
Then
Okay, that's another example. Yeah, like mechanical engineers. But like most of the examples I think of are like jobs that are physically demanding or in some way dangerous, like working on an oil rig, driving a truck, being in the military, being a coal miner, even just like being a bus driver. It's just like it's more physical and also like more physical, more taxing, and you're putting yourself in potential danger more than most of the like elite careers. There's some exceptions, but
This would have been fun to think about in advance, but having just had the idea, I don't have time to articulate a good answer to it. But it'd be fun to try and think of, okay, cool, we've leveled up the right. Now how do we level up the left? Maybe Scott will do a post like that, or we can think of something ourselves, or the community
I think
can.
the rationality community is like talk about that a lot. Like, I mean, basically, actually, a lot of these ideas are rationalist ideas, like anti-censorship, prediction markets.
But that's the conservative platform now. What do we do to level up the liberal platform?
Oh, like which issue should we pick that like we can sell to the Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a couple ideas right off, but I don't have the time or the brain juice now to.
I'd say like
Yeah,
make
we're
us the
over-
party of science,
That's what I was gonna say. My first thought was
and
like full endorsement of
specifically
science.
attack like organic foods and anti-vaxxer stuff and
Yeah,
like dumb global warming advocates that just say reduce like carbon and
or like you're a good environmentally conscious liberal if you don't use disposable straws, right? Like that. The straw thing is a good example of a complete waste of effort.
yeah.
yeah.
You can buy a steel straw and wash it and use it yourself, and then try good luck washing a fucking straw.
Yeah.
But if you manage to keep it clean using plenty of bleach,
I have a straw brush.
Exactly. But I mean, all that stuff costs a lot to manufacture and ship,
Yeah.
and all the chemicals needed to keep that thing clean are going to be pretty hard on the environment too, right?
Yeah.
But hey, at least you're not throwing away straws. So like, sound environmental activism might be a platform of the left.
Science-based environmental activism.
Shudder to think that you have to call it science-based, science-based science activism. But yes,
Science-based science.
We should probably wrap this up.
yeah. All right. Well, not before we thank our patron.
Yes. Is it my turn? I think I haven't done this in a while.
Go for it.
Okay.
Thank a person. Do it.
This person we would like to thank is Soon Jacobson. Soon Jacobson. Thank you for supporting all the classes, but especially the class you were part of is the best one. And we're glad that you could help us talk about this and bring this to the peoples.
The real hero this week soon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bring this to the real working class Americans who are the true people behind everything.
That's right.
I think for the most part, I think of rationalists as working class to middle class.
I think we tend to be upper middle class. We have a lot of programmers.
Yeah. I still think programmers more of working class, especially the ones who've gone through boot camps rather than colleges, because
We're just weird. We don't really like slot into the political norms. I think also not really the classes.
And they're not wage workers. They're salaried for the most part too,
yeah.
which basically means you get paid. I know that I'm not sure how the distinction fits, but yeah. In any case, whatever class you are, listener, especially you soon, is the best one. So, however you define class.
Unless you're the upper class, in which case, take
You're
your
a
money
patron
back.
of the arts.
They are a patron of the arts. Ah, good point. Okay, we like the
That's
upper
very
classes
high
that
status.
patronize us. If you would like to also patronize us, you can do so at Patreon, and you can be as cool as Soon Jacobson. All right. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you. Oh! We should announce this right now. Next
Oh
week
my
is
God.
going to be our live episode. Which
Oh, yeah.
it's been like a year and a half since we did the last one. So we will be doing that through the Discord. We will post a link, and we will, be unmuting people in the Discord and just chatting with them and having a live episode.
Awesome.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do we have a date and time set for that yet? Is it going to be Sunday at noon Mountain Time?
Yeah, it's going to be Sunday at noon Mountain Time.
Okay. And that day will be 2 weeks from
Sunday,
today?
the 18th, noon Mountain Time, which I should check what that is in UTC.
MDT.
Plus 6, so
Or-
6 p.m.
oh,
UTC.
UTC.
Okay.
Or 1800 UTC.
Okay. So
Yeah.
1800 UTC. Join us on the Discord. You can chat with us. We will be taking questions. We'll just be chatting with people, having a grand old time like we did last time.
Yay.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody, and see you then.
Woot. What are the rules?